All right, good morning. And we good? Yes, okay. Good morning and thank you for joining this morning for the State Board of Agriculture meeting. Today is Friday, December 5th, 2025, my husband's 80th birthday. This is Elin Miller, Chair of the Board of Agriculture, and I officially call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded and transcribed. Board members and guests, please state your name for the record before you begin your comments. We have two public comment periods today, one at 9:20, and we'll make sure we are absolutely accurate in stopping at that time and that's for the Laguama specific comment period is at 11. So the 9:20 is general and the 11 o'clock is Laguama. We may adjust the agenda today to ensure that we're on time. For those attending in person, please ensure that you have signed in on the green sheets and to provide comments to the board this morning. Make sure to sign up for the right comment period that you're wanting to participate in. For those attending virtually, please indicate in the chat that you would like to provide comments this morning. John Boyce, board coordinator, will review a few additional housekeeping items. John?
Thank you. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and transcribed. For those attending virtually, please ensure that your microphones stay muted so we don't get background noise. We also request that only board members and those actively presenting turn on their cameras during the meeting to minimize our strain on bandwidth. And if you are joining virtually or by conference call, our pre-meeting materials are available on our website at oda.direct/board-agriculture.
Thank you, John. You will now call the roll of members for introduction. I'll begin. Elin Miller, Farmer Umpqua.
Chad Allen.
Chad Allen, Dairyman in Tillamook.
Barbara Boyers excused. Mike Dill.
Mike Dill, public member from Philomath.
Ty Cleaver.
Ty Cleaver, producer, Klamath Falls.
Miguel Lopez.
Miguel Lopez, Great Rural Willamette Valley.
Kirk Mogg.
Kirk Mogg, public member, Portland.
Ellie Norris is excused. Eric Orem.
Good morning, Eric Orem, farmer from Heppner.
Josh Zielinski.
Josh Zielinski, nurtureman from Salem, Oregon.
Dean Stacy Simonich.
Good morning, Stacy Simonich, Dean of Oregon State's College of Agricultural Sciences and Director of the Oregon Agricultural Experiment Station.
Director Lisa Sharplow Hansen.
Good morning, Lisa Sharplow Hansen, Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roll call confirmed that we do have a quorum present and can proceed with the meeting. For those joining us virtually, if you can use the chat box to introduce yourself, your name and organization, we'll use that as the sign-in sheet. Throughout the meeting, I'll only monitor this chat box for technical issues. So in general, please refrain from using that chat box to chat with board members or other attendees. We do have a few virtual attendants online. Sunny, if we can start with you again.
Good morning. I'm prepared this morning. Sunny Summers, Senior Policy Advisor with the Oregon Department of Ag.
Perfect. Laura, I see you this morning.
Hi, Laura Passage, Director's Office of Department of Ag.
And Eric Setnicker. Nope. Okay. And for those joining us in person today, can we have each of you state your name, organization for our attendance records? Jonathan, if we can start with you.
All right. Again, good morning, everybody. Before we begin with Dean Simonich, I'm going to turn this over to Lisa for a couple of announcements.
So thank you. I failed yesterday to introduce Charlotte Campbell. Charlotte is the new executive assistant in the director's office. So you'll have opportunity to interact with her if you haven't throughout the meeting. I just wanted to make sure you had an official introduction. She has been a delightful addition to the director's office. And when I talked about the trade mission yesterday, I failed to include kudos to Carla Valnes for her work behind the scenes, helping to coordinate, organize, and really do the logistics around the mission for the Ag delegation. So thank you for all of your work. It's always excellent, and I know I'm in good hands when she sends me out the door with my briefing books.
Great, good. Actually, I want to say thanks to Stacy for the wonderful tour yesterday, and we'll be hearing more. And I think too, when your timing is impeccable, when the front headline of the Oregon Stater is all about what Oregon State contributes to the food we eat all over the world. So, you know, hey, not bad, not bad.
So, speaking of food, I'm eating my breakfast as we speak. Anyway, just a few slides this morning to tell you where we're at, take a little look back at the year, very brief. Very busy time of the year, of course, for all of us, whether you're in the fields or, you know, in a storage facility, a processing facility, university. So let's first take a look at our enrollment in the college. And if you haven't heard the news, OSU has had increased enrollment every year for something like 28 years. And it's the only land-grant university, large land-grant university in the country that can say that. So, you know, that's amazing, and over that length of time, some of that is in part due to our very successful, very large eCampus programs. But let's switch to this slide, which is really a focus on our College of Ag Sciences. No, previous slide. Yeah, let's look at this slide and look at the enrollment in the college over time. Another year of about 2 to 3% increase in growth in the college and student enrollment, about 13% increase in the last 5 years. And this gives you a little breakdown of our students. About 53% of them are in Corvallis, about 47% of them are enrolled in our online programs, and we still have our program at LeGrand. You know, it's about 20 or 30 students a year. So it's a small but important percentage. And we often, in the past few years, have seen the growth on, more growth on eCampus than in Corvallis. But this year we saw growth both, more growth on campus than in eCampus. And so people have said, well, what's the reason for this? You know, WSU, UW-Madison, other large land-grant universities with colleges of ag sciences have been seeing a decrease over the past 5 or more years. And it's hard to know exactly why that is, other than I would say I can point to our big increased effort since I became dean 4 years ago to recruit FFA students, not only from Oregon, but also attending and recruiting at the national meeting. So that we can't really say or see if that percentage is going up, but certainly we know those are top-notch students. And but, you know, also very broad college, very broad study areas, including food science and toxicology and fisheries, so lots of options. What we do see in our students, compared to the rest of the university, is that we have a larger percentage in our college of transfer students, maybe transferring from community college, or maybe were in college and had to leave because of life events and are coming back. We see more students who are first-gen students. I was a first-gen student, so, and also Pell-eligible students. I was a Pell-eligible student. So, but that means they have financial need. So in general, our college has more transfer students, more first-gen students, first in their family to go to school, and have greater financial need than other colleges in the university. And so we have to be very mindful and work very hard to meet the needs of those students. We give away about $1 million in scholarships every year and provide advising, et cetera, to help them navigate the university system. And of course, in eCampus, we see a lot of students, more adult learners, coming back to finish their degrees from all over the country. It's amazing. Like, I love that. I know for some of us in the room, it might be hard to imagine learning online. But I tell you that these students, we make every effort to get these students internships somewhere in the country. But I love it when I show up at one of our experiment stations like we did yesterday, and we have a transfer or an eCampus student doing a summer internship in Oregon, in Union, Oregon, in Pendleton, Oregon, you know, from somewhere else in the world, in Hermiston. So we definitely work in that experiential learning. So, and we actually have one student who, as a high schooler, worked at our McCarrick station that we visited, Hood River Station, yesterday. He's now a freshman in the college. So we love all those pipelines, you know, to and from and getting out into the state. All right, so next slide. So I did mention this earlier in the year, but I just want to call it a definite highlight of the year was the renovation of Withicum Hall. I don't know if, you know, many graduates from OSU here and online, this is not your grandfather's Withicum Hall. This looks great. This looks great. This is a more modern facility. Thanks to Tillamook County Creamery for the Tillamook Innovation Dairy Lab. Just all these students making, selling, you know, advertising dairy products. Now we call it Beaver Classics. So ice cream, we've got an ice cream shop back, you know, it hasn't been around since the 60s. It's a high point for the university and recruiting and, you know, K through 12 students coming in the summer, pulling their parents in. So we got a food truck. And so if you haven't stopped by Withicum Hall and checked it out, you can look in and you can see product being made. So, you know, we're a university. We're not necessarily, you know, I like to think of it as a not-for-profit business, but, you know, we're learning the ropes. Our students are learning of the ropes of, you know, how do you make, sell, hopefully not lose a lot of money in product. So it's fun for the whole university. All right, next slide. So research-wise, you know, a big part, not only the students, but extension and research. What does that look like? Well, from a research expenditure standpoint, the amount of money we spent doing research in FY25, end of June, was went up to $85 million. So we've really been knocking it out of the park in terms of increasing the amount of research money we bring in and spending it on research from 60 million to 85 million in the last 5 years. So we've really, you know, and a lot of that is federal money. It starts with Commodity Commission money and grows then. We do the initial studies to get the funding at the federal level, whether it's USDA, NSF, NIH, DOE. You wouldn't believe the places that we get money from. So that's good news. We're working hard and doing research. The bad news is the new research awards coming in dropped significantly in FY25. So between the new research award money dropped from $110 million fiscal year 24 to $64 million in research awards in FY25. So that's about a $50 million drop. That is all people. And that takes, you know, 1 to 2 to 3 years to percolate through the system because those research awards are for those period of times. And in large part, it was because USDA, NIFA, and many other federal grant agencies were offline for a big part of 2025, also then the shutdown. So this is a direct hit on our funding for people's summer salaries, for faculty research associates, for graduate students, for undergraduate research. That's a very big hit, and we don't know if that will continue at that level or not. What we do know is that our faculty are submitting record numbers of proposals. So we're getting the proposals out there, we're cranking the lever on all the research, and we have a very diverse array of sources, right? We're looking at industry, and we've always had industry money, but how do you backfill $50 million in shortage in research awards? So this is very concerning. I'm going to tell you about the state side of this. This is the federal side of this. Both are very concerning. This is $50 million a year. So next slide. All right, one thing I'm proud of, at the OSU level, we have a new strategic plan called called Prosperity Widely Shared. And so every college is going through and creating its own strategic plan to fit under Prosperity Widely Shared. And ours is cleverly called Cultivating Prosperity, since we're, College of Ag. So anyway, we have that out there. You can find it, a very short document, and just shows how we align and will help the university meet its goals. Next slide. All right, let's get into the state budget side. Not a good picture. So I found out that, we heard about this, and we've heard about this from Lisa and the state agencies, having to project scenarios on the order of about 5% cut. And when we first started to hear this at the university level, they were also anticipating something on the order of 5%. So there's money that comes to the university through PUSF, which is the portion of the funds they give OSU and other U of O, et cetera, to teach, right, to support the students. The statewide public services program is separate from that, a separate line item. So it includes, you see on the left there, the agricultural experiment station. That's what we saw yesterday with Brian. The OSU Extension Service, which includes ag extension, and in forestry, the Forest Research Lab. So we're a separate line item from the money OSU gets to teach students. And so you see in the next column, our legislatively approved budget for 25-27, and it was significantly less than continuing service level. I think continuing service level was around 9.5. Lisa talked about the increased costs, for government. We have those same, we're government too, and those same increased costs for employees, et cetera. So the next column was already short what it takes to keep up with inflation. So then you go to the next two columns, and Monday, much to my surprise, I received word that the Higher Education Coordinating Committee, or HEC, which oversees the funding for all of OSU University, or all of Oregon universities, decided to treat the statewide public services differently in their funding than Oregon's Oregon's universities. So they've decided, while HEC has said to the state, universities, this is what it would look like for the universities to take a 5% cut. Much to our surprise, they've said this is what it would look like for the statewide to take a 7.1% cut. So we don't understand why they chose to treat the statewides differently. I don't want to get into a lot of that, but it is what it is. Of course, the statewides play a big role in economic development in the state, and we need that more than ever right now, right? So we're navigating that, letting folks know, sharing our concern. So that would be about a total of about $14 million over the biennium, on top of not receiving CSL, right? So we're definitely going backwards. So next slide. All right, this is my last slide, and I know it's very detailed, but death by 1,000 cuts. You see, and this is for the college. Ag research, the cuts we're looking at, including the 7.1% put forward by HEC, the ag extension side, including the cuts put forward by HEC, and also on the agricultural teaching side, the cuts we anticipate have already received from the university, et cetera. So that's really, it's now getting up to the $10, $11 million range. So when you combine about $50 million less in federal research dollars, along with, let's say, $10 million. Of course, you're looking at $60 million happening in the next few months, and definitely this coming fiscal year. So unfortunately, our college is about at its, where it needs to operate is about $180 million budget a year. This is going to bring us down to, $130, $120 million college. So it's very concerning. It starts to, we have to look at everything, including places like we visited yesterday, right? We have a lot of experiment stations out in the state. Each one is incredibly valuable. No overlap in what they study, serving the local community. So I've already started to take initiatives to start to downsize. 9 months ago, I could see some of this coming. So I offered an optional early retirement program within our college. No other college offered that. The university didn't offer that, but we did it. And we got some folks through optional early retirement. They won't be replaced. I've had to pull back many positions that were even advertised. So just giving a heads up to commodities, et cetera, that this is going to be really tough and we need your help, and we're going to have to make very difficult decisions. So I just appreciate all your support, and grateful to be a part of this wonderful team. So thank you.
Are there any questions we have? It started out very, very positive, and then it kind of didn't at the end. I was like saying, yay, way to start the morning. So anyway.
You gotta tell the truth.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. Dean Simonich, thank you very much, and thanks for leading through. It's tougher to lead through tough times than it is happy times. So I do have a quick question. Where are we compared to Purdue?
Oh, in terms of budget or?
Research.
Oh, research, about the same.
Still.
Yeah, but after this, well, they're probably facing many of the same things we are.
Okay.
So I haven't checked lately. But.
Yeah, but I've been into the Beat Purdue with a guy who runs NASDA, and so, yeah, so this is good. Okay, all right. Okay, next, we're going to have Sunny Summers, who is joining us virtually and has been working on the rulemaking for the Central Oregon Protection District for rapeseed brassica crops. So Sunny, I'll turn that over to you, and thank you for the update. And it's great because what we're trying to do through the board is actually have a lot of visibility into our rulemaking processes as well. We didn't have that as much in the past, so thank you for kicking us off on what we're looking at in Central Oregon. Sunny?
Good morning, Chair Miller, members of the board. For the record, my name is Sunny Summers. I'm a senior policy advisor with the Oregon Department of Agriculture. And I am going to apologize in advance. My coworkers today are 13 and 15, so hopefully they can keep their stuff together, but there may be some background chaos. I'm not going to bring the tone of the morning up much, Chair Miller. I apologize. I don't get to work on easy things, as you know. So I think the moral of the story today is resiliency, though. This is a strong theme for Director Sharpelo Hansen, and I think this ties into that theme. And when we talk about resiliency, we're talking about helping farms and communities stay strong and productive, and really building systems that allow Oregon's farms to adapt, bounce back, and continue thriving over time. And as a child of the forest industry in the 80s, this is something that is near and dear to my heart, is making sure that our rural community can be resilient and thrive. Next slide, please. We have what we call General Control Area Authority at ODA. And basically this gives us the authority to put control areas in place around certain pests, plants or plant products. You know, some examples would be, we have various counties in the Willamette Valley under what we call a quarantine for Dutch elm disease, for example, or the entire state for blueberry maggot, apple maggot in multiple counties. And we do that under this authority. Next slide. We do have brassica control areas. 3 of those are using that general control area authority. I want to be really clear that the Willamette Valley Protected District, which you've heard about, I think, in previous board meetings, was specifically created by the state legislature. So that is separate from ODA's authority. So currently we have the Central Oregon Protected District that we're going to be talking about today. We have one in Northeast Oregon. And then we have one kind of along the Idaho border that my understanding is kind of a good neighbor area to work in concert with a control area that Idaho has in the same area. Going into the next slide, we do have what we call statewide Brassicaceae rules. And so regardless of whether you're in one of those 4 control districts, if you are growing brassicas, and just to take a step back, brassicas, when we talk about that, we're talking about things like broccoli, cauliflower, mustard, or rapeseed, which canola is an edible variety of rapeseed. If you're growing any of those crops, regardless of whether you're in one of the control districts or not, you need to meet certain requirements, including any of the seed that you are planting being certified blackleg free or be treated to control for that disease. There's plant back restrictions. There's requirements around harvesting and transportation equipment, and making sure, if you think of a mustard seed, these things are tiny and you don't want them blowing out of the truck as you're moving from the field to the processing facility. And then if you have volunteer plants, making sure that you're controlling those. And the reason for this is if you've ever grown these crops, they love to cross-pollinate and create new varieties, which is one of the beautiful things and why we have so many different brassica crops. But when you're trying to grow something true to what it is, you don't want that cross-pollination to happen. Next slide. So that kind of brings us to the Central Oregon Protected District. Back in, I think it was 23, the department received some petitions to repeal or modify the control district. Anybody, the public groups can petition an agency to review their rules or repeal them. And so we had at least 2 growers initially, and then some other folks also submitted letters in support of that. Next slide. Currently, that Central Oregon Protected District covers 3 counties, Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson County, and has some pretty strong restrictions on what brassicas can be grown there, and specifically canola. Again, canola is a rapeseed that has what is called low erucic acid. Erucic acid is toxic to humans and animals. So there's industrial forms of rapeseed, and then the canola is for human and animal consumption. Currently, folks can only grow canola in the Central Oregon Protected District under a research permit. So they have to work with a research facility, which currently is primarily Oregon State University. They have to have a 3-mile isolation distance. They have to make sure they meet all of those statewide brassica rules that we just talked about. They have to get that permit from the department. And we've had, I think probably in the last 5 or 6 years, 1 or 2 growers each year in the area that have gone through that process. It's not really conducive to growing this crop very easily. And I think the other thing that I would make sure that folks are aware of is this area specifically is, has had a lot of drought issues. there's concerns about is there enough water to grow crops, and what is a low irrigation or low water need crop that they can grow in the area, especially over the winter. Um, a lot of the requests listed concerns about I think it's spotted frog in the area and water allocation for the spotted frog. And so they are looking at um, reduced access to water beyond what they're experiencing with the drought systems. Next slide. So just a map zoomed in. What we've kind of ended up with after multiple conversations with growers in the area, it probably does not make sense for Deschutes County to be part of this. The folks that wanted to grow in Deschutes County are out towards Brothers, so that far eastern section of the county. They're located away from other growers. The folks in Crook County have requested that they not be included in a control district, and they feel like they can work out a good neighbor agreement for the ones who are concerned about it in their county. Jefferson County, though, has expressed interest in maintaining a control district. Next slide. So what ODA is looking at doing is in addition to that general control area authority, ODA has specific authority for rapeseed production. And my understanding is the history around this is primarily around making sure that we are protecting those low erucic acid varieties from the high erucic acid varieties and not wanting to have cross-pollination happen between those two. You know, in a state that grows over 220 different crops, coexistence is kind of the name of the game. You know, I've worked on coexistence issues in the Willamette Valley between grapes and grass seed. This is another one. And so I think where we are looking to go and why we're giving you this update today is creating a control district in Jefferson County specifically to protect those low erucic acid varieties from high erucic acid using our rapeseed production authority in addition to that general control authority. This will give hopefully growers the opportunity to have some choices to work together. OSU, thank you, Dean Simonich, has agreed to help work with growers in the area to do some pinning, you know, so some determinations, put pins on a map, whether it's physical or Google Earth or something along those lines, so that they can make sure that they maintain some isolation distances. Next slide. So again, we had those petitions back in 23, 24, had conversations with growers in the area to really get a feel. A lot of what came out of those conversations was less about cross-pollination from brassica to brassica, but concerns about pollinator services. So especially in Jefferson County, a lot of folks growing carrot seed are bringing in pollinators, you know, honeybees to pollinate those fields, and they're concerned that if there's overlap in bloom time, that those bees might be tempted, because you can't corral them like other livestock, might be tempted to fly over to the neighbor's field and pollinate the canola and not the carrot. I think there's some ways that growers can work together out there, you know, making sure that they're doing fall planted canola versus spring planted, you know, depending on the year. And from my understanding from folks, that's less likely to be an issue. We started rulemaking last year, but there were conversations directed by the legislature around the Willamette Valley Protected District, and we really wanted to see if there were any of those conversations that could be extended beyond the Willamette Valley. I think there were maybe some pieces, but as you know, there was no agreement we were able to come to during those conversations. And so we when we said that we were going to hold off and wait to see what happened around those Willamette Valley conversations, we said we were going to revisit it after that conversation. And so that's what we are doing now. We are looking at holding rules advisory committee meetings probably starting in March. So waiting until after the short session, because the short session, try saying that 3 times quickly, is, as many of you know, a sprint and all hands on deck. So we want to make sure that we are focused on that, get through that before we turn our attention to this conversation, and then have those rules adopted in time for fall planting, probably having them adopted by the end of June so that folks can start ordering seed if they want to. Again, I don't anticipate a huge demand for this, but I do think it is one more tool in the toolbox for growers to make sure that they have options as they look at the changing landscape and how are they going to be resilient moving forward. Next slide. So again, we're working on drafting it, looking at having those meetings March, opening up the rules for public comment, having them in place for that fall planting. With that, I'm sure there are lots of questions or comments, so happy to take those.
Right, Sunny, yes, you do seem to tackle the tough ones, so thank you very much for all your work. Let's open it to questions anyone might have. Yes, Director Orm.
Eric Orm for the record. Thank you, Sunny, for the presentation. About how many acres in Jefferson County does this encompass? On average, I guess.
That's a great question and one I don't know the answer to. I can get back to you on that. I'm not sure how many acres are farmed in Jefferson County, but I can look at USDA census and try and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Mike Dill for the record. Thank you, Sunny. Appreciate the presentation. I have 2 questions because I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about this issue. Can you share any more details about kind of the protected districts in the Northeast and along the East Coast, or the East border, and why those are still in place, or if they're going to remain in place? You mentioned something about friendly neighbor agreement, and I'm just wondering if there's something specific with Washington and Idaho where maybe they have protected districts, or just what the reasoning is there. And then curious if you can just kind of expand on what happened in the Willamette Valley District, because I know there was a lot of discussion and I haven't followed it super closely, but I thought there was some kind of concession on acreage, but it seemed like there was going to be a deal, but somehow the deal didn't go through, or I don't know. I'd just like to know why, like what the holdup was in the Willamette Valley.
Yeah, those are both great questions. So we have a long history of rapeseed protected districts in Oregon. I think and a lot of this was well before I started working on this. So I'm only able to address what I understand. So if I get it wrong and somebody else has better information, please jump in. But we used to have multiple control districts. And then in the 2010, 12, 13, I think there was a push for, everybody was going to use biofuels, and industrial rapeseed was going to be part of that. And so there were a lot of conversations, and that's when the Central Oregon Protected District and the Northeast District were put in place. The Northeast one, I'm not sure about. I think, it has some of the same issues and concerns that the Central Oregon one does, but folks haven't petitioned the agency to make changes to that. The one along the Idaho border is because Idaho has a control district that requires a 3-mile isolation distance, and folks could be growing across the river within that 3-mile isolation distance. And so we've kept that one in place, like I said, as a kind of good neighbor policy with our neighboring state. So hopefully that kind of addresses the first part of your question. The second part about the Willamette Valley Protected District, the conversation did not come to any resolution. I mean, that's the moral of the story. I think there maybe was better connection and understanding on all sides after that conversation, but there still is no resolution. You know, there's significant concerns about both cross-pollination to our specialty brassica seed in the Willamette Valley, which is a little bit different conversation than what we have in other parts of the state. So the history around that, as I understand it, is even our specialty brassica seed growers have struggled over the years as to how to maintain isolation distances among their own crops. And they created the Willamette Valley Specialty Seed Association with, originally with funding from the state to help create the pinning map and the pinning system that they currently use. So there's, you want to grow broccoli seed, true to broccoli seed, you have to maintain a certain isolation distance from any other brassica. And then, so there's that piece, right? And then there's the other piece of not just disease, but other genetics. Rapeseed is one of a handful of crops that do have federally approved genetically modified varieties. And that is a big part of that conversation. And I think part of the conversation where ODA really wants to make sure that we are supporting all of the farmers in the state and not taking sides. And so it is not an easy conversation and one that we have continued to have.
Thank you, Sunny.
Any additional questions? Seeing none. Sunny, I'll just conclude by saying thank you for taking this on. And I think it's important for a regulatory agency to look at where they have things in place that may not make sense anymore and to hone down where it does make sense. So I think from an efficiencies and everything else, this is really a very, very good direction to have that discussion with the public in general. And Director Dill, did you have another comment?
Just one quick question I saw, and thanks, Sunny, for providing the 4 petitions. I read through those. Were there any petitions or letters received for remaining the district, like keeping the district intact? Like, was there public, I don't know, what was heard, what was said on, like, retaining the district?
Thanks, Mike. I think there were a couple comments when we had the rules open last year, asking that we not completely remove the district, but that we maintain some form of the district, which is why we're having this discussion about Jefferson County and not saying, hi, I'm here to talk to you about repealing the district completely. Some of that, again, is from maybe a marketing standpoint of being able to say, we have a control district in place. We have some rules in place to try and maintain these isolation distances. So, if you're buying from this area, we do have, it's not just a free for all, right? We've got our hands around it to a certain extent. There's also, my understanding, a oil processor in the area, which is the other reason why it feels like a viable option for some growers in the area, is that they don't have to ship it up to Washington. They're just maintaining it within the county or within kind of that tri-county area. creating both an edible oil, and then the seed pressings would be available for animal feed. So we have heard, yes, please keep it, have something in place so that we all know who's growing what and we're working together, but we want this as an option for an economic option for our area. I would also just add, thank you, Jonathan. Phone a friend kind of here. He looked it up, and there's about 542,000 acres of land in farms for Jefferson County. So to go back to Director Orum's original question.
Director, did that fully answer your question then? Okay, great. All right. Any other comments or questions? Again, Sunny, really appreciate that. And we'll, I'm sure, continue to be hearing from you. And we will be visiting near the area or in the area, right, in June when we go to Madras. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot more focus. What's the timing again? I know you showed the slide, but.
Yep, probably around June is when we'll be either open for public comment or having just closed it, is my goal.
So that timing is perfect for our timing for the board meeting too, for, again, another opportunity for public awareness from a comment standpoint. We also have focused this board meeting, and I'm stalling a little bit because we've got 3 more minutes till the public comment period, but we can keep it open. But that we wanted to hear any specific comments first in this public comment period on the Central Oregon Protection District, if there were any comments based upon what Sunny just provided, any general public comments in regards to that. And I don't think anyone, okay, we do. Oh, thank you. There it is. Thank you. Okay, so we do have signed up. We have Alice Morrison from the Friends of Family Farmers, who is here with us virtually, who would like to comment on the COPD.
Hello, my name is Alice Morrison. I'm the co-executive director of Friends of Family Farmers, and thank you for the opportunity to comment in front of the board on this important topic. I know that you have heard from us many times on the perspective of small and mid-sized specialty brassica seed growers in the Willamette Valley Protected District, and I would just caution the board and the Department of Ag to make sure that any choices in changing protected districts around the state are based on the scientific conditions of the crops we're talking about, and not only limited requests from individual farmers, especially when we are setting precedent for how protected districts might be treated across the state in the future. We are very concerned that the process shown here for changing the COPD could be seen as a precedent to take action in the Willamette Valley Protected District because they are similarly structured in many ways. And we would like to see a more robust public engagement strategy. I know that there are further steps that will be taken, but it is upsetting to us that there would be action taken at the agency level to dissolve a protected district that has been in place for a long time for very good reasons, at the request of a limited number of individual farmers and not at the request of the entire community. So we would just want to see an emphasis on changing conditions and the science behind it, and to note that the science from OSU does not conclude that there is no risk from canola. I would refer folks to the work of Dr. Jim Myers on cross-contamination, and a very robust scientific record that there are cross-contamination problems, not only from crop to crop, but in the possibility of brassicas like canola crossing with ditch weeds, and there's a lot of documentation that I will share with the board on that, and studies in similar areas or for similar crops in Montana, where they do not have the ability to grow specialty brassica seeds anymore because of the proliferation of canola crossed with ditch weeds in the brassica family. So I know that the board and the department is not trying to choose winners and losers, but on this topic, we see that the specialty brassica seed growers do have a lot more to lose, and there are alternatives to canola for replacement crops. So we would love to see more discussion of alternatives to canola that don't pose the same risks to an entire other industry, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Are there any additional comments? Because some people, I guess, joined virtually, and there may be additional comments regarding the control district that are online. Okay. So we have received that comment in regards to the control district. And again, Sunny, if you're still on, I think there's a lot of touch points, at least that I was seeing, that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for public comment as we go forward. So I think that's going to be an important piece. But can you just refresh us? Because it sounded like maybe there wasn't, and maybe I missed that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair Miller. I think I'm always happy to put a plug in for our very robust rulemaking website. And so if you go to oda.direct/rulemaking, there is a link to sign up for all ODA rulemaking updates. So I would encourage folks to sign up for that. When we do have those rules advisory committee meetings, we will notify folks through that listserv. That's an opportunity. Typically, moving forward, we will have a short public comment period, kind of like the board is doing here today. So that would be an opportunity for more public engagement in the process, as well as that once we do have a set of rules that we feel like are good to be proposed, then those will be filed with the Secretary of State, which opens a public comment period. Typically, that's at least a month, if not longer. So that would be another opportunity. I'm also happy to meet with any groups that want to discuss this topic further. And, we're available for conversation, I guess, is the moral of the story.
Great, thank you, Sunny, because obviously a RAC is formed. The RAC meetings are always public, and RAC members participate and they speak, but anybody can join a RAC meeting to hear what is being discussed. And then the conclusion of that RAC meeting, if I've got you correct, that then out of that RAC meeting, there'll be a proposed rulemaking that might coincide around our June board meeting, where we'll have another open discussion, and then you'll have the official comment period for that for 30 days. So we're talking 6 months from now. So hopefully that will be able to suffice, and we want to make sure it's as transparent as possible. So appreciate the previous commenters' comments, but just for the record, we do have a process in place that we wanted to make sure is fair and very transparent. So great. Thank you, Sunny. Appreciate that response. The next part of the public comment period is general public comment on anything and everything about the Oregon Department of Agriculture. And I do not believe we have anyone signed up for that public comment. Is that correct, John? That I've got that one right? And that public comment period goes till 9:40. But I think what we can do is there anyone online at all that we might have missed that wants to be part of, again, this is general comment. We're going to have another comment period regarding Laguama later, but anything regarding the general focus of ODA. Okay, looks like we don't. My question is, do we have the individuals here for our Columbia River Intertribal Fish Council presentation yet?
She's on her way up, so maybe 10-minute break.
Okay, 10-minute break now, and then we won't take a little break later, so take advantage of your 10 minutes now, and we'll reconvene at 25 till 10. Thank you. to their seats, please. We have the pleasure to be hearing from the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Council in regards to watershed, from the Watershed Management Program Manager, and really about the current projects in the area, and an overview of the Tribal Energy Vision, which is good because we heard about basically the energy strategy of the state earlier in this meeting. So this will be a good discussion on that topic as well. So I'll turn it over to Elaine Harvey.
Good morning. I'll fix the mic here. My name is Elaine Harvey. I am the Watershed Department Manager at the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and our main office is out of Portland, Oregon. I am a Yakima tribal member, and I've been working for what we call CRITFIC for about 2.5 years. I come from the Yakima Nation, worked in Yakima Nation fisheries for about 20 years before coming to CRITFIC. And so this morning I'll be talking a little bit about our overview of CRITFIC. I'll try to get through those slides quickly so that I can talk a little bit more in depth about the energy vision plan that we have. And so, basically the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, we represent the 4 Columbia River tribes, treaty tribes, the Yakima Nation, the Umatilla, Nez Perce, and Warm Springs. And, since time immemorial, we utilize salmon in ceremonial and for subsistence purposes. The 4 tribes were real similar. We refer to ourselves as the Salmon people, Waikonashpum. And, in this picture, you can see the Celilo Falls, which was permanently inundated from the Dalles Dam. We view the salmon as a gift from our Creator. And historically, the salmon, comprised half of the calories consumed by the tribes compared to the consumption rate, which is over 10 times the U.S. average. At one time, the salmon were abundant, and this photo is of Underwood, Washington, just across the river, which was a well-known fishery, tribal fishery village site, and where this family is drying salmon. For some reason, the video is not playing, but on YouTube, you can search the Celilo Salmon Feast, which was the video in the screen there. Every year, we have our annual Salmon Feast at all of our longhouses, on all of our reservations, and even up and down the Columbia River. Back in 1855, the treaties were negotiated with the U.S. government, which reserved the exclusive right of taking fish in the streams running through and bordering the said reservation, and hereby secured Indian lands and at all other usual and accustomed stations in common with the citizens of the U.S. And of erecting suitable buildings for curing the same. So all 4 tribes do have this clause within their treaty, and which is an important clause because it has been upheld in court through the U.S. versus Washington court case and the U.S. Versus Oregon court case. And in these court cases actually reaffirmed those reserve rights, but also allowed the tribes to be co-managers in the region of salmon. So in this map, you can see the Columbia Basin in the kind of darker orange-brown color. You can see the size of it, and then you can see the 4 tribes, their treaty, what we call treaty territories. So like for example, the Yakama Nation, the darker color is the Yakama Reservation. The outer lighter color purple is their ceded treaty territories where the Yakimas continue to reserve their right to fish, hunt, and gather, and also co-manage. And then the same for the other 4 tribes. But as you can see, the tribes do have a vested interest, and they have many fisheries projects. They have hatcheries all throughout these areas, habitat restoration going on, supplementation, and the tribe's area does, if you compare it to the basin, include approximately 88% of the basin. So the tribes do and continue to work on many fisheries projects, but also in regard to wildlife and others. Since times of the treaty signing in 1855, the salmon have declined from about 18 million, and now to the current number, modern day, of 1.3 million in the Columbia. So, the populations have declined 90% since 1855. Why? One reason is overharvesting back in the mid 1800s. Habitat loss throughout the basin. Hydropower development has been really key in the decline of salmon, just with turning a wild river into a series of reservoirs. But also you have the fish turbines, implications for salmon to migrate through the dams, and they're just a whole series of causes of the hydro system. Mainly today, our biggest concern is water temperatures. The John Day Dam had 78 degrees in September this year, and the Dalles Dam had 73 degrees in early September. Those are record highs for salmon, and they wouldn't swim past the Dalles Dam. So they were stuck behind or just upriver of Bonneville Dam because of those high river temperatures this year. So, the dams do create a lot of issues for salmon. You have high water temperatures, you have invasive species, you have predation all at these dams. So back in the 70s, there was unity of action after the US versus Oregon court case, where the tribes came together and developed and established the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. Here are our monitoring areas. So I'll start from the left. It's the coastal margin observation and prediction. We have, so near Astoria, within the watershed department, we have this program called the CMOP program. And what we do is, at the Coastal Margin Observation and Prediction Station is we monitor the estuary for, we have buoys out in the estuaries, and we monitor the environmental variables such as dissolved oxygen, temperature, acidity, and we also have some inland. And then our Crayfish headquarters is in Portland, Oregon. We have a maintenance center that's at the Dalles, Oregon. And so up and down the Columbia River, there are over 30 fishing and loose sites, which are areas that the Army Corps built that are for the 4 tribes fishing access. And these were actually village sites that were removed during dam construction, prior to dam construction. So our maintenance center, we have staff that work at all these fishing areas to provide maintenance. We have enforcement office here in Hood River, and our enforcement department, they oversee the tribal treaty fishing and public safety for tribal members. We have a fish research station in Moscow, Idaho, kind of connected with University of Idaho, and also a Hagerman Fish Genetics Lab, which is a really important genetics lab regionally. A lot of fish researchers send their fish genetics down to Hagerman, and that's also connected to the University of Idaho. And we have a good handle on what's happening with the fish, with salmon, steelhead, sturgeon, and Pacific lamprey now. So within the CRIFIC organization, in 1995, the tribes developed a restoration plan called the Waikanash-Miwakishwit, which is a first holistic restoration plan for salmon in the Columbia Basin. And Waikanash-Miwakishwit means the spirit of the salmon and really looks at the whole life cycle of the salmon. Within our restoration plan, we're addressing many issues throughout the life of the salmon, from egg to juvenile smolt, migration to the ocean, and returning back to freshwater. So since 1995, our focus was mainly on freshwater habitats, the Columbia mainstem, and tributaries. But with incorporation of our CMOP program, now we can get a handle on what's happening in the estuary, which is an important area for salmon juvenile and adult migration back to the ocean and back to the Columbia. So the estuaries, really is kind of like a bottleneck area for salmon, sturgeon, smelt. We're not just focusing on salmon, we're focusing on many of the native species of the Columbia. Just some more photos of the estuary, which we work with other agencies, NGOs, organizations to address tidal wetlands and estuary floodplains, because these are areas where juvenile salmonids would hang out before going into the ocean. So I kind of want to go through these, but so I can get to the energy vision. So, thinking about what's going on in the estuary, you have as smolt migrate out to the ocean, their physiology, they're changing and going into the ocean. So they have a lot of issues, and we're seeing with our CMOP program that the acidity, ocean acidity is going up. When the water temperatures go up, the DO goes down. So it's kind of an area where the fish are struggling to either go travel out or travel back in, and then you have many different predation issues going on down there. Some of them are invasive species, and some of the areas are native predation happening, in which we can see, through pit tag data. So here's one of our buoys that we have out there in the estuary. Here's some of our fisheries commissioners, the elder men who went on a tour to check out our CMOP program. Here's our stations in the estuary. As you can see, we have some out in the estuary, some more inland. But yeah, all these stations are either buoys or stations just set up along the Columbia. And you can actually go onto our CMOP website and see actually what's going on today. And really, with our CMOP program and with all of our CRIFIC different areas, so we have fish science, we have fisheries science, we have we have harvest management, my watershed department. We're all looking at climate change and how climate change is impacting the different aspects of our work, including ocean survival. We have studies out in the ocean. We have, within our fish science department, we have some of our biologists out there doing lamprey studies. We're doing, just a whole variety of studies throughout the basin and even out in the ocean and estuary. Here's some of our staff putting a buoy out. And the main thing for us is preparing for the future with climate change, and some of our data is actually utilized by NOAA and even the shipping, the mouth of the Columbia River, you have all the shipping happening, and they actually utilize our data too. It's, so it's not just for fisheries purposes, but for other purposes as well. And also, I think this is important to bring up is our CMOP program is now moving, not just working on the estuary, but now we're working on the main stem Columbia and trying to address some of the issues on the main stem Columbia. In this photo here, you can see the White Salmon River. So, after the dam was removed, you had all that sediment come down, but many of our tributaries have these unnatural sediment loads in the Columbia, and they're just getting worse and worse. So you can see this is the Klickitat River Delta. It's a really shallow area, and on most days you'd see a bunch of boats out there, and some of the depths of the water is actually could be like 4 feet or less in some areas. So you have big salmon trying to migrate up all these tributaries like Wind River, White Salmon, Klickitat River, Deschutes River, and then you have all these deltas like that, these unnatural deltas. So within our program, we're trying to do assessments, bathymetric surveys, and others to look at potential of dredging these areas for fish passage. So, the deltas have been they're unnatural, and we need to adjust those because these also are hot areas. So, the shallower the water, the hotter the water, which is not good for fish. And then at some of these deltas, you have big areas of invasive predation going on, like these pelicans, sea lions. Down there in the Lewis River, you have the smelts coming in, then you have piles of sea lions waiting for them to come back every year. So here's another photo of Klickitat River, and we're really focusing right now on Wind River, Klickitat, Deschutes, and even upriver, all these tributaries to address these unnatural sediment areas. So that's the end of this PowerPoint, and I want to go into the energy vision because the energy vision was was developed by the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. We worked with many other organizations to develop this energy vision plan, and the 4 tribes did endorse this energy vision plan, and I think it's important just because we're in a time of energy transition. And the energy vision plan, really takes in consideration the fate of the salmon, which is intertwined with the hydropower systems. In 2003, we have our original tribal energy vision plan. In 2022, well, actually probably in 2019, 20, around COVID time, we decided that we would do a new or amend our 2023 tribal energy vision plan. So it's available on our website. 2013, we had an update. In our 2022 Tribal Energy Vision is focused on addressing 4 interconnected and critical issues, which include the climate crisis, salmon at risk of extinction. We still have many ESA listed species in the Columbia and tributaries that have critical habitat areas. And the push for a quick transition to carbon-free energy has been real impactful with the high rate of projects proposed and happening. And the Energy Vision plan also addresses the bad energy planning that can make things worse for salmon. So CRIFRIC and its member tribes envision a future where the Columbia Basin electric power system supports the healthy and harvestable fish and wildlife populations, protects tribal treaty and cultural resources, and provides clean, reliable, and affordable electricity. Their first goal includes creating a regional energy portfolio that protects and enhances environmental quality, treaty-protected resources, and supports the restoration of Columbia Basin's fish and wildlife to healthy and harvestable populations. The second goal is to prevent new and reduce ongoing damage to the Columbia River Basin resources, which include the fish, water quality, and tribal cultural resources. Recently, with this rush for green energy, there are many projects that have proceeded and neglected to address tribal issues and concerns. And what we want to prevent is what happened historically with the hydro systems, where the tribes were just pushed out. And we lost Celilo Falls. We lost village sites. We lost fishing sites such as the falls, but we lost cemeteries, archaeological sites. We lost so much. And what is happening right now is similar with this whole energy transition. It's all happening again. When you have these wind projects, solar projects, and then you're having transmission projects. And one concerning to us is the Cascade Columbia transmission project, where they want to run a line from the Big Eddy and the Dalles through the Columbia down to Portland, Oregon. We have a big concern with that. In transmission is a big issue. When they built the transmission lines, the tribes were also not consulted, right? And we end up going to court, and we're kind of losing burial sites. They just dig through our burial sites and archaeological sites and important areas for food gathering. So it's kind of like we're all going through this whole it's an energy transition, but who's really carrying the burden, And so that's what this plan is addressing, some of these issues when it comes to cultural resources. The third is to provide increased protection for both fish and wildlife and utility customers against unanticipated events such as drought, fire, and market aberrations, while providing an adequate, economical, and reliable electric supply. The fourth goal is to mitigate climate change impacts to protect Northwest ecosystems. And so our plan is available online, and in Washington and Oregon, we've been really advocating for the states to take a look and add our Energy Vision plan in energy planning. So within our plan, the Energy Vision describes the crisis that continues to face, our salmon face, and steelhead the populations, salmon protections that have been weakened or eliminated, and the need for a near-term and long-term changes for the configuration and operation of the dams. And one concern that, one big issue that our Energy vision plan wants to address is all this intermittent energy coming online. They need battery systems. And we do not want the Columbia River to act as a big battery system for wind and solar, because when you do that, you're going to slow the Columbia River down more, which will warm up the river more. And we're seeing with high water temperatures, you have fish dying. 2021, we had sockeye, mini sockeye that were dying. 2015, we had the biggest sockeye kill in the Columbia due to water temperatures, as well as sturgeon. We had thousands and thousands of sockeye just floating in the Columbia just because of high water temperatures. So we don't want the Columbia River dams serving as just big batteries for the solar and wind. And that's one big issue that is addressed in the Energy Vision Plan. Because, we do represent the salmon and all the other aquatic species. So, it's one of our big concerns is not having the Columbia dam serve just as a big battery for these intermittent sources. So what significant Northwest energy system changes already in progress? We have, promoting stricter policies and standards. That we support the coal phase out, energy efficiency, and electricity adequacy issues. And the tribes aren't against all green energy, it's just a siting of them. And then also not putting the burden of the energy on the salmon again. In the future, currently it seems the solar and wind energy cost has decreased dramatically, and it seems like there's a lot of projects proposed out there for solar and wind. But then you have the issue of transmission, it seems like, in this current day. And the utility plans for renewables from 2021 to 2045. You can see there's a big push for solar, for storage, then you have pump storage, and just looking into the future of what's planned from now to 2045. And within the Energy Vision Plan, there are 43 recommendations. John, how much time do I got?
15.
15? Okay. The recommendations focus on improving river configuration and operations. There are already court cases that establish flows for the Columbia River for salmon migration, but it's like a balance of energy, the energy need, and then it's really complicated. And so the flows over the dams, then you have the reservoir heights, and then you have fish migrating out, or you have fish migrating in. So the first one, is really complicated. And we have modelers, for the Army Corps, we have modelers for BPA and the tribes that are all working on this, on river flows. So that's, one of our recommendations. And then we have been also working with the Columbia River Treaty, because whatever happens in Canada with the negotiations between Canada and the United States will have an effect on what's happening down here in this region. So we've been really engaged with the Columbia River Treaty. We have recommendations to reduce peak loads, maximize energy efficiency, harness renewable resources, to strategically site renewable resources. And that kind of goes back once again to tribal consultation. It's like the tribes need to be consulted early, not after, not after the developers and the states all decide on these projects, and then they're like, oh yeah, you got 60 days, respond to this, and that's kind of where and what is still happening, and it's the tribes are having to go to court because of that, and it just turns out expensive. So, really, pushing to have the states, counties, it's like, hey, why don't we include the tribes early in the process instead of late and then have all these problems down the road. And also to increase resource adequacy, minimize transmission and distribution system costs, and address the climate crisis. I kind of did the overview of the Energy Vision Plan and our recommendations. Like I mentioned, there are quite a bit, and if you would go onto our website and just type in the CRIFIC Energy Vision Plan, you can see all these our recommendations. Because I don't want to take up too much time. There's quite a few of them, but I think they're all important in this time and where we're in this energy transition, going into renewable energy in the states of Washington and Oregon, but also thinking about transmission. And then, we're even thinking at CRIFIC and the tribes of the implications that data centers are having and the concern that the high energy need that data centers require, as well as water. So, we're thinking about all of that. There's a lot on our plate, I guess you can say. But yeah, so within our recommendations, I just kind of went over these and so the process that we went through to develop the 2022 Energy Vision is we worked with our staff, we worked with the tribes, we engaged 6 energy experts in the preparing of the Energy Vision. Drafts were reviewed by 28 organizations and outside experts. And there's been ongoing review by tribal staff in 2021 and 2022 with periodic briefings. And this was adopted in 2022 by the 4 tribes. So I think that's also important that, you see the 4 tribes on that map, you see the regions that the tribes have vested interest in. So, and they are for Columbia, the only 4 Columbia River Treaty tribes. So that's the end of the presentation for the vision plan.
Elaine, thank you. I'll open it now for any questions, comments from the board members.
I think I got a question.
Okay. Director Allen.
Yeah, Director Allen, for the record. So we had a presentation yesterday from the state director for energy on their strategy. Could you explain to me what involvement you guys had in developing that strategy?
So within our policy department, we do have some staff that been involved in that strategic plan, but also like the Warm Springs tribe and the Umatilla tribe of Oregon have been also involved in that strategic planning. But and we also, in Oregon does know that the tribes do have this energy vision plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Director Orem.
Yeah, thank you, Eric Orm, for the record. Thank you for the presentation. I agree the siting of transmission and some of the sites have been proven to be detrimental to wildlife migration, birds. I was curious, does the tribes, have they seek mitigation funds from some of these projects to help restore some of the wildlife and fish habitat, to help fund some of those projects?
I think not all projects have mitigated. I know that for instance, there's a project in Washington. I know we're in Oregon, but the governor told the project proponents, you guys need to consult with Yakima Nation before this project will proceed. But because of the current administration and the push the deadline to get those subsidies paid out, the governor just threw 100,000 or 300,000 at the tribe and said, here you go. This will address your cultural resources and the project will proceed. And actually there was an article. So, it's kind of like some of the projects are doing mitigation, some are not. Some are just like totally ignoring. Because when I was working for Yakima Nation, there was projects where like, hey, we're not against this 5,000 acre solar, right? We just want to protect the shrub steppe in this certain area for wildlife, for cultural resources. And they're like, no, and they just proceeded and ignored the tribe's issue. And so that's kind of what's happening. And so it's kind of, if the tribes are early engaged in deciding, they wouldn't have such a big issues. Okay, for another example, the Horse Heaven Hills project in Tri-Cities, 85,000 acres of wind and solar, but primarily wind up on the ridge tops. The Yakima Nation asked them for 4 turbines to not be placed in one area because it was a sacred site. And the company from Canada said, no, that's going to throw off our whole plan. So the Yakima Nation took them to court, and there was also a Phrygianus hawk issue, because it's a nesting area. But because of the Phrygianus hawk, right now the project's still on hold. But 85,000 acres, and the Yakima Nation only said 4 turbines, and the company was stubborn and said, no, that's going to throw our whole project off. I don't think so. I was like, no, they should, at least respect the tribes. They're only asking for 4 turbines to not be placed, where they're not having an issue with the other, areas of the project. That could have been an easy mitigation if the tribes were at the table early in the game. But before we go on, I forgot to mention, I didn't have it in my slideshow, that CRFIC we also do social services, because people live in those unloosed sites I was talking about. But we also do food distribution. So we have food distribution program within CRFIC, and this is all because of COVID. And so because of COVID, we have fishermen still living on the river, and we're providing COVID health services. We got a health van, like I don't know what you call it. It's like a nurse station, mobile nurse station that goes up and down and helps people. And we distribute food on a monthly basis to some of the tribal members. And we have a fish sales program. So we have a department whose main focus is on promoting tribal fish sales up and down to Columbia. So, and sometimes you see it on the Portland news of like, where could you find salmon for sale in the gorge? So I forgot to mention those two in the presentation.
Well, Elaine, I want to thank you for being here with us, and obviously the leadership of CRFIC. I think it is very helpful, obviously, for sovereign government-to-government relationships between the tribes and government. But when, 4 significant tribes join together with one focus, with one voice, not always one voice, but you become one voice, I think it's very helpful in resolving issues. And one, maybe not quick question, but one question I would have is, you had talked about different extreme weather conditions, let's call it, say, wildfire. What, from a CRFIC standpoint, are you dealing with, like a forestry management focus? There's smoke issues for grapes, there's smoke issues for lots of other people, there's smoke issues, obviously, and fire issues for habitat. But in your forest management, is there some things you're doing collectively to deal with some of the wildfire prevention issues?
I'll just briefly bring up that I was on the Northwest Forest Plan Amendment Federal Advisory Committee, and we try to, because the Northwest Forest Plan includes the whole Cascade Range from Canada to Northern California. So we did. There was 5 of us tribal people on this advisory committee who try to address forest management and bring in cultural fire back to the landscape, but also planning for the future of old growth management, communities, and tribal inclusion, because in the 94 plan, they excluded tribes and didn't incorporate them. And then, climate change and fire resiliency, but also I'm on this, I'm on a study, we're working on a project with TNC, it's called Fire, Forest, and Salmon. So we're looking at what can we do in the Pacific Northwest and the Western US, planning with all these catastrophic fires happening. What can we do, to protect salmon habitat, to focus on areas doing certain maybe types of forest management to, protect the streams, the rivers, water quality, and even promote cold water temperatures. So I'm working with TNC, but also with University of Washington and Colorado State. We have, I'm like one of the co-PIs on it. So it's a pretty interesting project through TNC. And we're working with tribes of the Northwest on this, and including the Intertribal Timber Council, which is out of Portland. Yeah. So, I think the tribes are working to address forest management on their reservations as well. Like the Yakama Nation is upgrading their forest management plan currently, but also the tribes have included within their climate adaptation plans forest management for fire resiliency and climate change into the future.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I want to say thank you, Elaine, for coming to our meeting. And it was a nice understanding of your vision, your energy focus and vision from a tribal standpoint, given we had just heard DOEs. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're just a titch early, but I think we can proceed with the LABWAMA update for us. And so next will be both Isaac Stapleton, our Natural Resource Division Director, and Nick Siravatka. Siravatka, what? Czech. Okay, I have a lot of Georgian friends, so I've got, yeah, anyway, Siravatka. Thank you.
Just wait for John to pull up the presentation. While he's pulling that up, good morning, Chair Miller, Director Sharplo Hansen. I'm Isaac Stapleton, as you said, Natural Resources Division Director. We'll get into the LABWAMA stuff, but I do want to introduce Nick Siravatka. He is new to ODA since June. Prior to coming to ODA, Nick's had a long, diverse career in agriculture. He spent part of his career as a faculty research assistant with OSU, focusing on field research of cropping systems, soil, water, and nutrient management interactions, and alternative cropping. He also spent a year in New Zealand on their southern island, looking at diverse cattle and crop operations as well. From there, he moved to USDA, NRCS, as our soil conservationist for the Umatilla County. So he's had a lot of career experience in this area. During his time at NRCS, he held the position of Eastern Oregon agronomist, providing agronomy support to field staff and producers in the counties east of the Cascades. And he also served multiple terms as the acting state agronomist for Oregon. And he, before leaving NRCS, he took a position as the National Soil Health Division, USDA agronomist, serving Central Oregon Central US and the Western states. So long, diverse career. We're very excited to have him on this particular project and this resource within the agency. The last time we were here, well, actually, let me back up. First, I want to make sure to thank all of the RAC members that participated in this project. We had 10 total meetings, lots of time spent both in those meetings and outside of those meetings, looking at information, providing feedback to the agency, providing different articles and research for us to consider as we develop the rules. We would not have been able to do this without them to get a product that I think really will start to address the problem and look at agriculture's contribution. And also our staff time. We had tremendous staff, Renee Moulin, Sunny Summers, Nick joined the project, Kevin Fenn, they've all poured a ton of energy into this to get it to where it is today. So as I mentioned, we had 10 total. So the last time we were here in September, we had 2 RAC meetings following that to continue to kind of get some feedback and hone some of the sections. There's still not total agreement on the rules as you would expect, right? Like we're landing somewhere in the middle, which I think is where we absolutely need to be. But there are still concerns remaining with residual soil nitrate level sampling that's required in the rules. So that's looking at residual soil nitrate below the root zone. And it's a once every 5-year deep soil test that is then submitted to the department for long-term kind of trends to look at. When we were developing the rules, we were wrestling with what makes sense as a tool to look at what's happening and how effective or not this may be. Right now, the tool that we have is DEQ's monitoring well network. But we all know that once it's in the aquifer, it's very difficult to understand where that came from and do anything about it once it's there, right? We would rather look and address things at the surface level. And so this was a relatively inexpensive option instead of doing more technical things like a lysimeter that would be expensive for growers to put in to get real-time monitoring information. This was a way for us to say, can we look at trends over time in a non-regulatory way? We're not setting specific limits or values. It's just to look at trend data over time, and it will take us a while. And even in the rules, there's language about not doing an actual analysis of that data until there's scientifically sufficient data to do that. So 1 year of data or 2, whatever, doesn't make a trend. So we acknowledge that. But there were also folks that wanted to see additional data actually collected by the department and submitted and analyzed. So there's several components of record keeping that is kept on farm for the growers, but we will look at when we do an audit. Some folks wanted to see all of that come to the department and made public, and that's a component that didn't make it in there. It is available to the department to analyze for make sure growers are doing what they say they're doing, but it's not something that's submitted to the department. A couple of the other changes that Nick will cover, there's comments around like the size of operations that fit into the bigger category of annual nitrate planning requirements and additional record keeping. Folks wanted to see that number lower to include more growers. We took that feedback and moved the number down to 500, but recognizing that there's a difference in resources and capabilities, there's a phase-in period that's different. So we won't audit folks in the 1,000 acres or more for 3 years, and we won't audit the folks that fall into the 500 acres to 1,000 acres or more for 5 years. So that gives them the ability to develop those plans, to work with us through technical assistance and outreach. Nick, I'm pointing to Nick, in the region to do that work. So that's another adjustment. And then added a method to the section for growers on how they evaluate their annual nitrogen plan based off some feedback that we got through the RACs, looking at, well, Nick can get into it. It's the A over R, A minus R application versus removed, and some of the processes that come out of California and the way they've addressed groundwater nitrates. So the current status of the rules, they went out to public comment October 31st. We held an information session last night in Boardman at the Sage Center. So Nick presented to a group of folks last night. It was just informational, similar to what you're going to see today. And then we have on December 15th, another in-person information presentation, and then following public comment at the Sage Center. And then on the 16th of December, It's a virtual public comment hearing for folks. There won't be an informational session, but just for folks to provide comment. And then the last day for the agency to receive comment is on December 22nd at 5 p.m. So folks can submit that through the rulemaking website or come to one of the hearings. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Nick to walk through where we landed with the rules and what we can expect. Thanks.
Thank you, Isaac. So my name is Nick Servatka, as Isaac said and introduced me. Thank you. Really what we're going to do today is go over the rules as they are filed. I'll highlight some of the changes that occurred since the last time you guys met and had a presentation. But really I wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable and understood what is in the rules as filed, as in the draft version, and make sure that we're comfortable with what they look like. If we could go to the next slide, please. You're already there. Go back one. Thank you. So as we look at this picture, we look at the area of the Guama, it's very recognizable, the irrigated acreage based off of the circles. Now, as we look at that picture, there are some other regulatory networks that work within this Guama area. DEQ has permitted circles, irrigated acres, and then the CAFO program also has irrigated circles. So really what these water quality rules are looking at is those areas, those circles that are not previously covered under another permit. Now, I say circles, but that's not the only form of irrigation, obviously, that we have in the Lub Guama area. We still have hand lines, wheel lines, flood irrigation going on down there. And all of those types of irrigation delivery systems need to abide by these rules. Now, we do have a call out for larger operations, 500 acres or more, but there are rules that manage and fit for everybody. If we could go to the next slide, please. So rules that apply to all landowners. We have some prohibited acts. We have application rate requirements. Irrigation management in the Lub Guama is really going to be key to managing agriculture's inputs for nitrogen into the system. We also are going to pay special attention with these rules to animal pasturing, making sure that we are progressively monitoring how livestock is managed on these acres in this region. Excuse me. And then we'll drop down at the end of this conversation and discuss some of the annual nitrogen plan that has been heavily talked about during the RAC process. Like Isaac said, we had robust conversation with all of the interested parties, and I think we really came to a landing spot that gives us a great opportunity to, one, interact with the producers in the region, and two, identify what the nitrate loading looks like in the soil and how we can best manage and utilize that nitrogen so that we don't continue to have a contribution or a high-level contribution from the agricultural sector in this Lub Guama region. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So prohibited acts. Really what we're looking at is best management practices for agriculture in this region. So agriculture, we really need to pay attention to what we do and how we do it. And obviously because this Guama has been declared, it has heightened scrutiny, which is the reason we are developing these rules in the first place. So fertilizer may not be applied to agricultural lands in a manner that causes pollution. Sounds like a best management process to me. How do we apply fertilizer so that it's usable in the time, place, form, and rate for producers, the 4 R's of nutrient management? How do we allow that to happen so that farmers are not, producers are not hamstrung by rules? They can continue their economically viable operations, but we're paying attention to the potential environmental contributions that nitrate in this sandy soiled region contributes to. If we could go to the next slide. So other prohibited acts, person may not place fertilizer, fumigants, or pesticides into groundwater via backflow through irrigation systems or through well casings. Our friends and colleagues at Water Resources have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort going around working with producers in this area to implement backflow devices on irrigation systems. And they continue to do that, but in our rules for the GWAMA, we do have that producers shall not and will not introduce any of those additions into the groundwater. And then the last statement at the bottom is a catch-all. Landowner conducting ag activities may not violate the provisions of any of these rules. If we could go to the next slide, please. So we're going to stay with the applies to all landowners. And when we look at this, really, we need to know what is there before we can apply more to hit that agronomic rate. So the requirement is take a soil sample, figure out how much nitrogen you have in the system, how much nitrogen are you going to need for a planned crop, and document that so that you can come back and say, this is what I applied, this is why I applied it. The records are going to be retained by landowners for a 5-year period at their place of business. It will not come to ODA. And then back to the best management practices, let's not apply fertilizer to frozen soil. Frozen soil means anything that is frozen with a crust 2 inches or deeper. Let's not apply fertilizer to saturated soils or soils that can become saturated. Or if we know that the water table is shallow and has the potential to add water into the system that would reach, touch, capture some of that synthetic applied nitrogen and be able to pull it back down through the pore system of our soil, dropping it out of the root zone away from being an economically viable option for producers to capture. We want to keep that fertilizer, keep the money that producers really are spending to apply the fertilizer to raise their crops in the region of the soil that those crops can utilize it. One of the changes that took place from the last time you met to today is the change from originally 30 days of application of synthetic nitrogen to fields to, as you see on this slide, 60 days. That really came about as a response to some of these larger operations that are obviously operating many, many, many acres and don't have the equipment in order to get that fertilizer out in a timely manner and make sure that their plants are in the ground and able to utilize that as the plant growth curve hits the fertilizer in the place that it needs to be. So we changed from a 30-day period to a 60-day period in response to recommendations from our RAC members that we needed to allow for agriculture to be conducted in a manner that was productive for their operations. Next slide, please. As I said at the start, irrigation water management really is going to be key to how well these rules work with managing nitrogen, managing the application and use. So hopefully everybody is aware nitrate is a highly mobile form of nitrogen in the soil and will move freely with water as it goes through the profile. The compounding issue for the GWAMA is that we have a dominant sandy soil area which has large pore space and allows water to infiltrate and filter down through that sandy profile, soil profile, quickly and easily. As that water is moving down through that profile quickly and easily, it has the potential to take that nitrate down with it. So if we pay attention to the application rate of water, not just the application rate of nitrogen, we have the potential to make sure that we are not forcing through the application irrigation water that nitrogen down below the root level. We're going to require that producers match the irrigation water applied to the crop demand. There's lots of tools out and available to assist producers in that, and many of them, especially the larger ones, are already doing it as we speak as a matter of business and good business. All landowners in the Lub Guama should manage their irrigation water so that we are not continuing to contribute to pushing nitrate down below that root zone. If we could go to the next slide, please. So animal husbandry is conducted within the Lub Guama, and really what we're looking for with these rules is to be able to work with producers so that they have a better understanding, a good understanding of appropriate stocking rates. They're managing their manure from these livestock herds appropriately. If we are applying nitrogen, synthetic nitrogen, to get forage to grow, we're going to ask and require that producers are taking soil samples, again, so that they know what's there, they know what their yield potential is of that forage crop, and they're applying fertilizer at an agronomic rate so that it makes sense what they're doing. Again, irrigation, water management is a large player for forage crops, just as it is for production agriculture crops. We need to make sure that we're not pushing nitrate in these forage systems down below the root zone for these forage crops. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have overgrazing and create bare spots, because what is working for agriculture in this region is that the plants are taking up that nitrate, that nitrogen in the system, and utilizing it to make biomass. When you make biomass, especially in a forage situation, you're making money because you're putting it right through the cow and able to convert that green biomass into green mass in your wallet, I guess. So if we don't have that plant growing, taking up that nitrogen, we're opening up an avenue for that nitrogen to drop out of the system. If we could go to the next slide, please. So now I'm going to shift, because I talk really long and we need to move along. We're going to start talking about the large irrigated acreage program and what that looks like. You see on the title slide or the title block, 500 acres or more. As Isaac said, that is a shift from the last time we sat in front of you. It started out, the conversation had been looking at 1,000 acres or more. But when we think about irrigated agriculture, the opportunity of annually cropping, moving down from a 1,000-acre footprint to a 500-acre footprint really does make sense. That's a sizable amount of acres that are being operated by a single operation, and it really gives an opportunity for ODA. Isaac kept pointing at me and stomping on my foot. That's why I had to move my feet away from him. But it really allows us to work with and interact with producers, not to provide oversight to their operation, but to give them the tool, give them the opportunity to understand how their nitrogen is working in the system. A lot of studies that I read looking at nitrogen use and nitrogen management really come back to say that regulations and requirements for nitrogen management improves the economics of the operation. So having this opportunity to be able to work with these smaller producers, 500 acres or more, really is a win-win, both for agriculture in the region and hopefully for the producers themselves. We're going to ask that these producers that are building these nutrient management plans are actually using them to evaluate what they're doing and how they're doing it. if there comes to be an issue with how the plan works, we have built in the opportunity for some adaptive management measures to be employed. If we could go to the next slide, please. I want to reinforce that this annual nitrogen plan really is an assessment tool for producers in this region. It is not intended to be a regulatory tool. Now, we do require that growers have a plan, that the plan is developed and or signed off on by somebody that has the technical adequacy to validate that that plan is correct for the operation, for the crop, for the field. But we are not going to regulate that they met their plan. We just want to make sure that they are looking at it, utilizing that plan, and really managing their nitrogen applications appropriately. If we go to the next slide. So some of the plan contents, and I think based off of conversations that you guys had at the last meeting, we did develop a worksheet. So we have a worksheet in draft that really is a template for what the plan contents need to be, ought to be. But as you look at this, really it's a tracking tool for the producers. I'll say again, ODA is not collecting, not taking this information. These plans will be retained at the operations place of business, but we really need to know the crop year, the field identification, where are we basing this plan off of? What is the soil type? What's the soil nitrogen test? You can't build a structure if you don't know what you have as a platform. So what is the soil nitrogen? What crops are you going to put in? What is your estimated crop yield? Many, let's say almost all of the producers in this region have an understanding of what their expected anticipated yields are going to be. That's how they build their agronomic rate plans. So what is the yield? Where is the nitrogen from the system coming from? Irrigation water, organic matter breakdown in the soil, applied nitrogen. And also, how are you applying that nitrogen? Back to the 4 R's of nutrient management. Do you need to put all of the nitrogen on at one time? Can you utilize split applications so that you're spoon feeding the crop? Irrigation water management, we're going to ask that they document how they're managing their water, what form and rate they intend to put on the water. So I talked about who can certify these nutrient management plans. Irrigation, nitrogen management specialist. Specialist could be a soil scientist, crop advisor, a technical service provider certified through NRCS. It could be a landowner self-certifies these nitrogen plans if they have a recommendation from a qualified individual. So even if they don't have somebody on staff that can do that, if they have a qualified individual that has identified that this plan meets the agronomic rate for the crop you have intended, they can sign off. Or if a landowner is not applying any fertilizer to their operation, they can certify that they are not applying nitrogen into that system. We go to the next slide, please. This slide looks a whole lot like the last slide, except for we want to know actuals on this. When I say we want to know actuals, we want the producers to know actuals. We want them to be able to say, this is what we applied, this is our target yield, and this is what we ended up with. If we can go to the next slide. Now we get into the evaluation method. So this is what we ended up with, really comes into how close did we get to meeting our goal. We have some methods listed on this screen to highlight the one that was added since the last time we sat in front of you. The A over R method has been added. So the A over R ratio really is a snapshot of plant use efficiency for nitrogen in the system. When you look at what that ratio is, and A, as Isaac said, is applied, R is removed. When you look at what that ratio is, the closer you are to 1, the higher or the better the plant use efficiency is going to be in the system. The further away you drift from 1 up to, the 2, 1.75, that means that you are leaving nitrogen in the system. The A minus R opportunity is really a mathematical equation of I applied this, I removed this. This is a snapshot of what is left in the system. Now, I had a question asked of me last night during the presentation in Boardman. What about other losses? What about other areas of crop production that is not removed and not calculated? That is one of the stepping blocks that we are going to have to move through is the crop use coefficient. What part of the plant is being removed out of that system and what part is being left, the biomass residue that is left in the system that still has nitrogen attached to it? Is it incorporated back into the soil for microbial breakdown? So crop use coefficients do need to be developed for the A over R and A minus R opportunities for evaluation. Post-harvest nitrate samples is just that. Following harvest, before we get 3 inches of precip or 3 inches of irrigation added back to that soil, we're going to go in and require that producers utilizing this evaluation method take a soil test and see what is left into that system. The positive to this is if they take that soil test and understand what's left in the system, that helps them build their agronomic rate plan for the following year, for the next year. They know what's in the system. The last one is the estimated crop yield. So as they build their management plans, as they build their agronomic rate application structure, they're targeting a yield. If a producer has met or exceeded their estimated crop yield, we're anticipating that based off of understanding where all the source of the nitrogen coming into the system is, we're anticipating that the producers have utilized the free nitrogen that is and was available in the system for crop production. If we could go to the next slide. So we said that this really is an evaluation tool for producers. And what we have built into the rules is adaptive management measures. If you meet your plan, great. Keep doing the good things that you're doing. If you didn't meet the plan, why? We're going to work with the producers so that we can understand why they didn't meet their plan. What do we need to add? What do we need to take away? The royal we, I guess. What do producers need to add? What do they need to take away? How do they need to manage their irrigation water? What can they do differently so that they can meet the plan? If they continue to not meet the plan, maybe we need to sit down and work with them a little bit more about what is the best route forward. Is there an opportunity that we could change something in their operation, something in their system, so that we can get them into that green level? The other thing is, if we have free nitrogen in the system, maybe there's an opportunity to install a cover crop to capture some of that nitrogen so that we're keeping it within the system. It's not dropping out the bottom end of the soil bucket and entering the groundwater. There's vegetative solutions for all sorts of problems. When we get all the way over and knock on wood, we're never in this situation, but if we get to year 6 or 6+ and we're still not meeting, producers are still not meeting their requirements based on these rules, maybe it's time that we make sure that they're working with a certified crop advisor and getting good, sound agronomic advice in order to meet the requirements of these rules. We go to the next slide, please. So how are we going to utilize these rules and this data development to evaluate the program efficiency? Isaac said we're going to, at some point, audit the records, and that is a vague some point. I have a slide that we'll get to. Audit the records, inspect the records, on-farm inspections. Really what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have 100% participation based off of certifications that these producers have the nitrogen management plan. So all producers 500 acres or more are submitting the proof of certification that they do have a management plan. Long-term monitoring, on my slide I have it changed to a long-term monitoring rather than determining program effectiveness. We're going to look at residual soil nitrate levels as a benchmark to, do we have nitrogen that is dropping out below the anticipated expected root zone for production agriculture commodity crops in the region? So at that 4 foot to 5 foot level, do we have free nitrogen following the production year? We have a requirement that once these rules are adopted, that producers will take up to 10% of their operation a soil test and document that residual level. So we're developing the baseline within a year of the adoption of these rules. That's data that we can't get back if we don't do this now. Then moving forward in 5 years, we're going to ask that they go back to a GPS located spot and take a soil sample in the exact same location. Again, so that we can monitor, is there a change? Do we see a change in residual nitrogen below the expected rooting zone? We go to the next slide. Isaac mentioned this, so I'll go fairly quickly through it. It is a change, though, from the last time. The department, me, will not conduct an audit of the records within 3 years for operations 1,000 acres or more. That isn't a free pass that the records don't need to be developed. As soon as these rules are adopted, we're anticipating that producers will start to develop their nitrogen management plans, be it 500 acres to 999 acres or 1,000 acres or more. They're developing these plans. But because we understand the larger operations probably have a more streamlined opportunity to have these plans currently established, we're going to look at the 1,000 acres or more first and then allow another 2 years of grace for those smaller operations, allowing ODA the opportunity to work with those producers so that they can understand what the reporting requirements are for nitrogen management. But we really do want to emphasize to all of the producers in the region that once these rules are adopted, they will need to begin to build those plans. Next slide, please. So the residual soil nitrate, this is the 4 to 5 foot. This is the benchmark and monitoring soil sample that we're going to be asking these producers to conduct. We want to be able to go back to the same location so that we're removing as many variables as possible. It's a natural system, so it's difficult to remove all of the potential variables, but really what we're looking at is, do we have excess nitrogen existing down below that rooting zone. There's a May 1 requirement for reporting on this. So at the 5-year period, on May 1, we would anticipate that we will have 100% participation and have data from these residual nitrogen tests turned in. The operator in this region, the operator can change and will change frequently. So at the end of the day for this residual soil test, it is the landowner's ultimate responsibility that these 5-year tests are going to be conducted. How they accomplish that, we're not being prescriptive to that end. They can build it into their lease, however it works. But at the end of the day, the ultimate responsibility is going to be the landowner. Next slide, please. As Isaac said, we did have a public meeting last night. It was lightly attended. We're hoping for a more robust attendance on the 15th and the 16th this month. On the 15th, it's a Monday. We will be meeting at the Sage Center again in Boardman at 5:30 to 7, 8, depending on how many comments we field during the session. And then we do have a virtual only platform that we will be accepting comments on December 16th. We go to the last slide. Sunny pitched it right when I walked in this morning, so I'll pitch it again because she is proud of the robust rulemaking website. If you scan this QR code with your phone, you can go directly to the ODA rulemaking website where you can find a copy of the filed rules. And with that, I will stop and look forward to any questions.
We just have a couple minutes for questions before the public comment period will open. So what I think would be best is we'll go in the comment period, then we can come back to questions. So if you can remain during the public comment period. So, but we have maybe 60 seconds or so. Yes, Dean Simonich.
Stacy Simonich for the record. I just want to commend the RAC for having difficult conversations. If we're not having difficult conversations, something's wrong. So difficult conversations are needed on these complex topics. My questions are, I'm an environmental chemist. I understand the variability of environmental matrices, especially soils. I think it's just critical to understand the current state of the soils, right, at whatever depth, in whatever field, and most importantly, the variability. There can be huge variability. And so I wondered what kind of control samples would be taken in any given field prior to, I think you need to compare and contrast to understand the current state. So be taking control samples maybe away from the field that's being used, and then starting with the field that will be used and then studying over time, not applying to that spot. So I can imagine 2 different types of control samples to document any given field.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's do, because we may have more comment on that, but let's go ahead and move to public comment if we could. We don't have anybody physically here, so you guys can just stay there, I think, unless I got that wrong. But we did receive, just for the record, we received 3 different written comments in advance of this, and we have 2 of those individuals here to provide public comment virtually. So the first one I'll call on is Danny Lighty from the Oregonians for Food and Shelter. So why don't you kick it off, Danny? And again, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Miller, Director Sharpelo Hansen, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Danny Lytle, and I serve as Policy and Stewardship Director for Oregonians for Food and Shelter. OFS is a coalition including agricultural commodity groups and the forest product sector, which come together to ensure science-based policies related to production tools, including fertilizers. I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective today, having served as a member of the LUB Rulemaking Committee. We support the goal of this rulemaking to protect groundwater quality in the LUB, and ODA staff have been responsive to various issues that have been raised throughout the process. My written comments highlight some of our remaining concerns. However, this morning I want to focus on our major concerns with the department's approach to program and trends evaluation using deep soil nitrate testing. While residual nitrate levels are undoubtedly influenced by fertilization and irrigation practices, they are also strongly influenced by many factors producers cannot control, including drought, rainfall, crop failure, or other crop issues. As just highlighted by Stacy, even within the same field, data has shown residual nitrate to be highly variable. It is impossible to draw conclusions about residual nitrate numbers, even more so when they are stripped of their agronomic and climatic context. According to the proposed rules, the evaluation may include a determination of the trends of residual soil nitrate levels if the department has a sufficient data set for a scientifically acceptable analysis. The fact is, there is no peer-reviewed scientific literature that supports analysis of deep soil residual nitrate trends over time. Rather than relying on best available science to develop their rules, ODA is requiring producers in the LUB to incur sampling costs and go to great efforts to generate a data set for which the department has no scientifically based plan for analysis. With required reporting but no science to support data interpretation, this will only perpetuate misinformation in the region and pose reputational risks to producers without basis. No other state uses residual soil nitrate as a regulatory success metric. California's expert panel specifically advised against it during the development of their irrigated lands regulatory program. An OSU extension publication cited by ODA within these proposed rules states that, quote, the post-harvest test is not intended to predict groundwater nitrate concentrations. Recent studies by Washington Department of Ecology have demonstrated that the post-harvest soil nitrate test is only a rough indicator of the risk of nitrate leaching, end quote. Anchoring the regulatory program's success to residual soil nitrate trends has no basis in science, will not provide a clear picture of the rule impacts, and will simply burden growers with unnecessary costs and risks. We heard Isaac this morning argue that the deep soil nitrate is a good compromise because it is less expensive than other monitoring options. But we want to stress that this isn't about cost or compromise. Any required metrics and reported initiated through these rules should have a clear connection to science and a clear purpose. This requirement does not. This is a basic expectation that will lead to a credible and measurable program that achieves its intended goals while sustaining agriculture and supporting producers in the LUB. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate those comments. Ryan Craybill, I believe you were on as well from the Oregon Farm Bureau to provide comments.
Yes, Chair Miller, and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Chair Miller, Director Hansen, and members of the board, for the record, my name is Ryan Craybill, and I am speaking today on behalf of the Oregon Farm Bureau. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. OFB has roughly 6,500 members who live and work in every corner of Oregon, including in the lower Umatilla Basin, where agriculture has long been the backbone of local communities. OFB supports the underlying goal of ODA's Lower Umatilla Basin groundwater management area rulemaking and shares the objective of clean drinking water and groundwater protection. My comments today are in addition to more extensive written comments that have been included in your materials. Simply put, the current rule as drafted blurs the line between a regulatory program and research project. No doubt you have heard or will hear from others regarding our shared concerns with program evaluation metrics, such as deep residual soil nitrate data collection. This particular metric not only lacks scientific validation, but its use has also been specifically discouraged for regulatory purposes in the state of California. Legitimizing this experimental metric as a defensible regulatory tool would further erode trust within the regulated community and significantly undermine the regulation. Additionally, the draft rule oversimplifies the dynamic environment of agricultural production. Agricultural practices neither exist in a controlled environment, nor do they abide by perfectly predictable formulas. As a matter of practice, agricultural producers rotate crops for a number of different reasons, including soil health, market opportunities, logistical pressures, labor needs, etc. Crop selection is but one example of man-made variability in which agricultural practices are rarely, if ever, replicated. Once a crop is in the ground, Mother Nature can and frequently does have a much different agenda. As tempting as it might be to view from a regulatory standpoint, agricultural production simply does not operate in a vacuum that is conducive to a sterile laboratory mentality. Finally, the additional burdens on and risks to agricultural producers that come with increased regulatory requirements should not be ignored or dismissed. This becomes even more concerning when unreliable testing methods constitute the added regulatory obligations and associated cost increases. In a region with ongoing litigation and intense public scrutiny, raw data, stripped of agronomic context, could easily be misinterpreted, misrepresented, or even weaponized against producers who have done nothing wrong, possibly resulting in irreparable reputational damage. From an economic standpoint, the financial burden of conducting scientific research tests that have not yet met minimal validation thresholds is questionable at best. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to ask if there is anyone else online that would like to provide comments at this time. We heard there may be someone who did. Okay. All right. Well, seeing none, what we can do is continue on with the questions from the board since we didn't have quite enough time. And Dean Simonich, did you have anything more there? Okay. So I will open it up to questions or comments from board members in regards to what we heard earlier. Thank you. Yes, Director Dill.
Mike Dill for the record. I was just curious for producers that have third-party certifications such as Global Gap that does have nutrient management requirements. Is there any overlap or I don't want to say exemption, but where that might qualify as a sufficient monitoring plan, whatever? Yeah, just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. The rules don't specifically call out an exemption for folks who may have like a third-party certifier, but they do allow flexibility in what your plan looks like. So you can either use a plan template that we provide, or if you already have a system that captures all of that information and maybe more, like that could fit that requirement. So it's not necessarily an exemption, but it is allowable.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I was just, there's always the talk about reducing paperwork and burden, so appreciate that.
Okay. I guess my question is around the whole 5-foot, sampling focus. And we've heard testimony and we've heard other things of California saying, hey, they didn't want to use it. I understand that the interest in saying, wow, we need to know really, really what's happening. We can have the management plan in place, and is that working, but also is it working versus ultimately from a well standpoint for a nitrate sample? Does any other state have any other method, or is there study now at the university or anywhere else where something in between is being used to look at measuring success? Because I worry about what was stated, the liability and other issues and misunderstanding, because it's not connected to really the reality of the situation at the time until you get into maybe some issues later. So are there other, maybe NRCS, is there anything else there from because nitrates has been a huge issue across the US forever.
Yeah, it has. And so there is a publication from North Carolina's Extension Services talking about the using like 28 to 32 inch samples to represent a way to monitor movement of nutrients in the top surface soil and their usage. So like there's some literature out there about that. In terms of looking at it as trends over time, I'm not sure that there is a state that's collecting the data in that way to say. And granted, yeah, there is a time gap between 1 and 5 years. Ideally, every single year, if you had that kind of data, you'd be able to see something more real time. So there is a weakness in us looking at it only once every 5 years instead of once every year in terms of like data and what it's telling us and how quickly it's telling us something.
Thank you.
So Isaac and Nick, as you worked through this process with the advisory committee, my sense is that the 5-foot measures is to look at what's happening and if we're making progress,
Yes.
generally, and to maybe avoid some of the criticisms that we struggled with the Ag Water Quality Program over time, where we didn't have a measuring tool or a measuring stick. Did you consider other measuring sticks or tools that we could look at over time for efficacy or change beyond the 5-foot measurement?
So, well, one of the measures that we currently have in there is looking at how many people are in compliance with having a plan and are following and, you know, having the audits and appropriate record keeping. That's one measure. The other things that I mentioned earlier was looking at, well, what do we just rely on the groundwater monitoring wells? Do we try and have something that's like a lysimeter that's more real time to tell us how things are going? Again, thinking about costs of things and how that would be implemented and where was a challenge. So this was an option that was put forward.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Sorry, Director Mogg, then Dean Simonich.
Kirk Mogg for the record. So this goes back to the prohibited acts portion and a couple of different pieces. So one, and I'm going to paraphrase it and not be exactly precise, but with respect to not applying fertilizer in a way that's likely to get into the groundwater, is there arguably overlap with DEQ's authority to protect groundwater there, or is the conclusion that there's a regulatory gap there and DEQ wouldn't have authority there?
Yeah, thanks for that, Director Mogg. So that actually is already existing in the area rules. It's just restated for the groundwater rules to make sure that it's clear that that's still a standard, that's still a requirement. You can't place waste where it is or will likely enter waters of the state, which is also backed up in statute 468B. So yeah, it's included in these rules basically, so to reiterate and communicate that is a requirement of these rules and is aligned with those other requirements as well.
Yeah, I guess my thought is, I think it can be challenging from a regulated entity perspective when they're working with one regulatory agency and then all of a sudden another regulatory agency that also has authority. And to the extent that there's a way to allow a regulated entity, and maybe this is an MOU or something between the agencies, but really to protect from competing jurisdiction.
Yeah, so maybe just to clarify, DEQ doesn't necessarily have, ODA has jurisdiction over non-point source ag. So there isn't two regulators that are co-regulating or having a confusion here. It is, excuse me, it is ODA through our Ag Water Quality Program and the area rules that are set, and then these rules to enforce that language. So there isn't a split who is knocking on my door. Is it ODA, is it DEQ? It is us.
And an MOU too that's pretty robust. That
Yes.
we should probably refresh that with the board at some point soon. So yeah.
I'll just add, just maybe to help a little bit. We draw almost all of our authorities for our water quality, Ag Water Quality Program from the 468 rules. And so they're just brought over to us as being the implementer for the non-point source for agriculture.
Dean Simonich.
Stacy Simonich for the record. Can you tell me what the lifetime of nitrate and nitrogen in general is in soils? And there's a chemical lifetime, there's the migration lifetime in these sandy soils. If we go and we dig and we measure right now in a field at soil at 5 feet deep, when was that applied? A year ago? 10 years ago? 15 years ago? Do we know this?
Boy, if we knew the answer to that question, we would be ahead of the game. Really, it's difficult to understand, especially thinking about the soil type and how mobile the nitrogen is in the soil. You know, the organic matter levels of the soil also tie into how is nitrogen tied up into that system. Is it free or is it bound within organic matter within microbial populations of the soil? So it is very difficult to know the when and where we are seeing nitrogen moving down out of that root zone, what that nitrogen looks like as it moves down. But getting a grasp of what's there, especially what's there below the anticipated root zone, is an important step to understanding how that nitrogen exists, functions, and is mobilized within that system.
And I would just say, as a scientist, not as a dean, I'm struggling with the 5-foot sampling, because you want people to be compliant. You want to have people, I don't even know how you take reproducible in location 5-foot samples. And we don't even know if it will be a measure of the past year, 2-year, 3-year, or 5-year agronomic practices on top of the soil. So I'm as a scientist, I'm not an agronomist, but as a scientist, I'm really struggling with understanding the 5-foot sampling. Given we don't know what's there right now, was that from 15 years ago or 1 year ago? So anyway.
Thank you. Director Cleaver?
Ty Cleaver for the record. What is like the water holding capacity per foot of like the soils in this area?
Sandy soils are very low water holding.
So like half inch. Yeah. And I'm assuming there's not a whole lot of hard pan here?
No.
Okay, and then what percent of the problem is from like past over fertilization versus this is a processing depot where a lot of nutrients get shipped here and there's a lot of residual nutrients left from those processes?
So the percent contribution from historic uses to what current, it goes back to the previous question. We don't actually know. There are multiple sources within this region. You mentioned process or wastewater, that is a source. There's septic sources, livestock, ag production. Those are all kind of combined. And we can't quite tease out like, is 10% this, is 20% that? Is it like where that's actually coming from? It's a leaky system. It's not a closed loop system. We will always have some loss. And, you know, so that's also a factor too. So where is it coming from? When was it there? That's a question that we don't have answers to yet.
In the 2011 study, nitrate reduction study, DEQ has a pie chart included in that, and it has estimated sources. And I'll highlight the term estimated on that pie chart. It's based off of footprints of the different contributors or potential contributors is where that pie chart and that estimated source of nitrogen comes from. So even back in 2011 with data coming from 2004 to 2007, we're looking at estimated sources of nitrogen into that system.
There isn't data in that to say what actual percent was leached, right? Yeah.
Want to say thank you. We do need to move on, but I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is huge commendations to the team, huge commendations to the RAC, also huge commendations to the leadership of ODA to say, look, we as agriculture want to be part of the solution. There are issues, but Director Cleaver, as you pointed out with your question, the lots of potential sources of issue, and Ag said, look, let's step up. The department said, we will step up and look at what we can do to mitigate. And I guess from my own personal comment here, I think a vast majority of what you've come up with is absolutely fantastic. But if there is something there that is questionable, maybe the 5 foot, and I would just ask you to really look at that again, but we'll see what public comments that are received beyond that. But to me, a robust, credible program looking at how we all can improve our nutrient management is fantastic and needs to be supported by ag. And let's not let one element potentially derail, if it would, the whole piece. So anyway, thank you and welcome to ODA, by the way. It's great to have your background. Thanks a lot, you guys. Appreciate it. All right, we're moving into our business portion. We've got some of our business stuff accomplished, but the next one is in regards to the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Commission that we are responsible for appointments for that commission. I'll keep this brief. One of the members, longtime members, who's been chair of the commission is retiring off or rotating off the commission. And it is our responsibility to look at an appointment for a new member in the agricultural arena. You've had a chance to take a look at the background we have, and the individual is, the chair is Doug Kramer, who is rotating off. So you have a few applicants in the book, and we could have some discussion. I would actually prefer, if we could, to have a nomination for the position from those three. And if we can't right this moment do that, we could go to some other items and then come back. But we would like to have someone make a nomination. I'm not hearing it jumping right away at this. So let's do this. We can come back to this in a few minutes, but understand we need to get that accomplished in advance of the discussion, or in advance of the conclusion of the meeting. The board newsletter we discussed yesterday, and we're concluding that we're going to use the quarterly report and have a board section in that. And I would suggest and would like to have additional comments that given the nature of this meeting, certainly the what we did and that I think that the team can come up with is really important. But also then let's transition to the what we should, emphasize. And I think, again, the panel that we had the first night is a pretty a lot of meat there as far as comment on what was received. But is there anything beyond that, again, it's going to be a real brief highlight, anything beyond that we should include other than where we went and, thank OSU and all those kinds of things? Okay, seeing none, we'll just have that. So we'll tick off the newsletter. All right, do I have any suggested nominee?
Elin, there's a nomination from Miguel in the chat.
Oh, Miguel, my goodness. Thank you. Yep. Miguel, didn't see that. Miguel, could you go ahead and let us know what your nomination is?
Thank you, Chair. Director Lopez, for the record, I propose Gary Wade as the nomination for the Heritage Commission.
Jerry Wade, is there a second?
Ty Cleaver, for the record, I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Jerry Wade to be our nominee for the this commission. Is there any further discussion? Any further nominations? Yes, Director Dill.
Mike Dill, for the record. I was wanting to nominate John Deck. Am I allowed to do that?
Sure, and so we may end up just deciding between the two from my parliamentarian Director Mogg could correct me. But so we've got, so who is it then again?
Oh, John Deck from Deck Family Farm.
Okay, John Deck. Okay. Maybe what we could do is ask Director Lopez, could you give a comment on why you feel that that nomination would be positive? And then Director Dill, I'll ask you to do the same.
Certainly, Madam Chair. So, Director Lopez, for the record, I was reading through Gary's application, and he has a great experience of wealth of knowledge in the rehabilitizing of the Columbia waterways. So he has extensive history and background in that, along with also running his cherry orchard out there. It seems to me that he has been actively involved in the community and has continued to seek ways to be of use to his local community, both locally and on other components. He has a NOAA Fisheries Service from 2005 to 2008, Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board from 2001 to 2005. And then in 2008, he decided to become a farmer, which bravo to him. Not many of us do that late in life. And so he has been doing that as well. So that was my whole consensus behind putting him forth as a nominee. And he's actually also worked with Dr. Ashley Thompson, the local extension agent, on a couple of things as well.
Right. Thank you, Director Lopez. And so can we also hear from you, Director Gill?
Sure, Mike Dill for the record. And for the record, I want to say that I don't oppose Gary Wade's nomination. It's just when I was reading through these last night, what stuck out to me most between the three candidates was John's application. I really, there was fish and wildlife habitat kind of understanding from both of them. But I thought when I was just my understanding of Oregon Ag Heritage Program and what it's seeking to do, I felt that John was a better candidate just in terms of all around understanding and focus on, climate volatility, economics, more than just, I think when I was reading Gary's application, what really stood out to me was kind of the watershed, the fish, wildlife kind of aspect of his background, whereas John, I thought, was a little bit more rounded in ag, land protection, and just kind of the land and the economic succession, all that. So.
Okay. What's wonderful is we have great choices. That's what's really nice. And I appreciate that we have three individuals who have applied for this position. That's fantastic. Probably what might be best is to go ahead and just have a straight up vote between the two, and take a look at what that looks like, unless there's any other comments on one or the other nominees leaning one way or the other. I'll take that first. Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead and let's do a show of hands for Gary Wade. Okay. 2. Right. And then let's show of hands for John Deck. Okay. It's going to be John Deck. And again, we had some very wonderful applicants for this. And we will encourage further application because there's quite a few farmer members of this. So there's going to be opportunities going forward for others as well. So I
just realized I voted and I'm a non-voting member. So.
That's okay. You know what? It worked anyway.
Okay.
It worked anyway.
Just wanted to clarify.
Okay. All right. Good deal. All right. Okay. Thank you. We've got that accomplished. Okay. Next on the agenda is newsletter. is the resolution review. And I might have led us down a kind of odd path before when I was talking about the resolutions, because what we have here in front of us is our staff has reviewed resolutions that might have been up for consideration and have some recommendations for resolutions going forward. And I guess from my perspective I was thinking about looking at the whole process to say, do we want to change the whole process or as we go forward? And I wanted to make sure that I had understood Director Orum's concerns with making sure we went for public review. And so let me try this on for size. And please, anybody on the team say, hey, we can't do that, or Lisa, we don't want to do that, or that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the idea to me is, I think where Director Orum was coming from in his comments earlier were, hey, we want to make sure that if we have something we want to look at changing, we have public comment on those resolutions. And absolutely, I think that's essential. But if there's a resolution that may just need a little tweaking, there's no really change that's significant or whatever, I guess my comment is, why even have it up for public comment? Then we have the whole process of receiving public comments on something that we don't really necessarily need or want any change for. So that's where I'm coming from on, it's almost like, okay, if there's something that the staff feels that we need to bring to the board's attention for revision, let's think about that. Certainly if we get public comment that says, or any board member is allowed to bring up a resolution at any given time to say, hey, we need to rethink this because we need to rethink it. So instead of being, again, on this cadence that this is the, this is the mantra, they can look at that. But again, my thought would be, if there's really no change, then why take the time for public comment on a resolution that doesn't need change? So that's where I'm coming from. And I'd like to have some discussion on that so we could kind of nail this, because we've kind of talked about this a few times before, but we haven't necessarily. And Director Sharples-Hanson, I'd love to hear any angst, or does that make sense, or whatever from you, maybe first, and then we can talk.
Thank you. So I do think that the public comment around resolutions as a board is adopting resolutions or modifying them is incredibly important. I also think looking at some of the resolutions in whole around issues that we may be grappling with to make sure they're consistent with what we're dealing with today is really important. But there are some of them that we're looking at that we spend a lot of time tweaking a couple of words, a lot of your time and a lot of staff time. And so I think finding a balance of that, I'm not sure that every 3 years is a very short time in terms of a review period. And so whether lengthening that a little bit could be helpful as well. I do think it's worth some conversation around the length of time and what we're doing with them, just in terms of workload for everyone, and making sure we're dealing with the ones, time and space, that are really important to the discussions that are happening.
I guess a question I would have, I was almost advocating, let's not have a cadence. Let's not have it every 3 years. Well, we could say every 5. Not even bother with that. And instead ensure that we have a strong awareness of the resolutions we have in place. And if there is something based upon, issues that are coming up or changes that are made, or our team knows that better than probably we do, that there's some issues that they could bring it up. But, if you feel that a cadence of whatever every year is needed just for making sure we do it and we refresh ourselves, which is, I think, why before was established, because it hadn't been done at all. Maybe we do need to arrive at maybe every 5 years or something like that for a cadence. But let's have some other discussion from other directors. Yes.
Josh Zielinski for the record. 3 years is too often for lots of them. I know that because it seemed like no time went by and was looking at the same ones again. However, legislation and business climate, different things can make a resolution suddenly very relevant. And I think it's important that maybe at some point throughout the year at one of the meetings and/or if ODA staff could just quickly go through the resolutions and say, here's 5 or 6 of them that there's definitely some things going on. Do you want to look at them? And invite the public at that point to maybe comment or, submit comments on that at the next meeting or something like that. Just an idea.
Yes, Director Dillo?
Mike Dill for the record. I think my suggestion is pretty close to what Josh just described. And I think for me, especially being a newer member on the board, I rely on this board packet quite a bit. And if it's not there, I'm not seeing it. So I think what I'd love to see is a list of all them in every packet of just the titles and maybe a brief summary. And so me knowing in the produce industry, I could say, oh, well, there's something that we're facing with that might be applicable to X, Y, and Z. I could bring that to the meeting. We could have an open session where if there's any board member that feels that one of these should be revisited, then we can suggest that for the next meeting and then either discuss it or open it up for comment or review. But I think if it's without having it in the board packet, then I just feel it's going to be out of sight, out of mind, and we're going to skip over it. And 3 years will have passed, 5 years, 10 years, and we won't have checked it, or reviewed them. And then I'm just curious if we need a max amount of time, every 10 years, they have to at least go through an official review. That's part I don't know what's required.
Okay, any other comments on that? And then I'll try to summarize maybe to where we might think about going. And I went back and I guess it's 000, which is our board review policy. And really, we're not chained by, at least as I read it, it doesn't say 3 years. It doesn't say, it just talks about review. So if we, on an annual basis, let's try this, had a summarization, as Director Dilly had suggested, just here are all of them for us consideration, so we can reflect back on that. But then have, if we or any of the staff or we hear from the public say, hey, we need to look at this, then that's how we would develop that year, we'd look at those resolutions for potential changes. Is that process, but then have to say, but everything has to at least be looked at every 10 years?
I think that's pretty close. I think the thing that I feel at any meeting, a board member could suggest one. So not just annually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At any meeting they can, but at least every year we'll focus and say, let's look at this. But then at any given time, any board member can. Director Zielinski?
I think it's important to keep in mind that we can't just pick the ones that we think are important. That's not what we're here for. If it's relevant to nursery or something, that doesn't mean I can just bring it up every time because I want to talk about it. And I think it's important to look at the climate of things and get direction from that. And if it's somebody within the department that's more objective, then maybe that's
right.
Or we kind of all can chip in. But
well, my thought would be, here's all the resolutions. Here's the summary of the and hear from a staff standpoint here important, but also we've been listening to public comment all along, and anytime someone can provide public comment, said, hey, one of your resolutions needs some revision. And I think, again, we've been on just this mantra of every 3 years we do the same thing, and it's been, I think, not as productive as we could have it.
So I was looking at John, and I like the idea of getting some type of a summary that's in the packets on regularly, for you all to have as a reference.
Yeah.
Because to Director Dill's point, if you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there.
Yep.
And I understand that you all have busy lives, and so going to a website and reviewing them in between meetings is a lot to ask. But if, in the preparation for the meeting, you have the opportunity to have it right there to scan, I think that makes it easier for you to stay up to speed and for us to be thinking about how these things relate.
Yeah. Okay, so can we look at, that can be in the board packet every time. But what I was thinking is we've always every December kind of anticipated what we were going to be reviewing the next year. Oh, Director Lopez, you have a comment instead of me rambling on.
No, Madam Chair, you're doing just fine. I wanted to merely suggest, thank you for bringing up our 000 resolution. And it sounds to me like maybe we could potentially, as the board, make some of these amendments to it together based on the conversation we're having right now. Because most of what we're talking about is covered in it already, but also we could add some of those parts and pieces that we've been discussing as well.
Yeah, that's what I would think would come next, certainly. But I want to also just get on with what we're going to want to do, and so the framework, and then we can ask basically the team to help put that on paper what this framework is. So let me try again. So if we had a summarization of all of them that basically are in every board book, very brief, and that at least on an annual basis, we would say, hey, is there anything for this next year? But at any given meeting, a board member or others could say, hey, let's take, staff could say we need to look at some revisions. And then we can just plan on that. Because once you say there's going to be a revision, it's at least a 9-month period. At least it's 2 board meetings we have to go through, because it's like you say it's up for revision, then you have public comment, then if public comment, then you decide, okay, do we have further revision, and then you may have to go out for public comment again. So it's kind of a process. So, and that's why if there's no revisions, why ask for more revisions? So would that kind of thing work? So for right now, coming from this meeting, let's have it our next meeting, and maybe December is a better time to do it in the future, but at the next meeting we could have that summary, see if there's anything there. We wouldn't act on anything that's in the book at this stage, because for the most part it was tweaks of the 3 that we were talking about, unless anybody says, oh, we need to, other than 000 that needs to probably get updated. And so we could just proceed with that process. I do want to mention, though, we have asked in the past on land use to collectively look at all those land use things, and in light of legislation potentially happening, can we, maybe I'd request, can we kind of look at those collectively and make sure we don't have inconsistencies, farm stands to whatever, in light of what's going on? As, again, a request going forward, as maybe an example of how a request can be made. So, does that work? I'm not looking at nods, I'm looking at just straight faces looking at me. So is this silence is acceptance, or?
I guess I'll make one comment, I suppose, or give my opinion. I definitely, chat out for the record, I definitely think we're in the right path. My experience on the board in terms of all the resolution conversations has not been very effective use of our time, without a doubt. And that I think I like this conversation, and whether we had one meeting was some time set aside in it for resolution conversations. Would certainly be a good step in the right direction. Yes.
Well, let's do this. Yes, Director Mogg.
Kirk Mogg for the record. I agree that the general framework sounds great. Not sure whether you were looking for input on whether we tackle the land use related resolutions in 2026.
Well, maybe let's do two. Let's do the general thing. Would the general thing been okay, and how we look at this? And we're going to put it on paper, John, because we'll look at, and we can have that for, a refresher, but we're not going to act on anything that's in the book of the three, because I don't think any of the three need to go out for public comment and all of that at this stage. If that's okay, let's decide on that. I don't know if we need a motion, but are we okay let's put this framework together, make it easier, and then the second thing, let's talk about the land use. So are we okay on?
Would you like a motion on the three? I could move.
Okay, I don't know if we actually have to have a motion on the three. Well, the policy doesn't say we have to do three every time. It's just if it's silent. So the idea of we just generally start looking at the list starting next time and have a review of how we're going to do that in March. Do we need a motion? Maybe not. Maybe not. Thank you. Thank you, though, Director Mogg. Appreciate that. So we'll do that. But the second question is, are we wanting to jump in and take a look at the various land use, or maybe hold off and let the legislature just decide? So, go ahead, Director Zelensky.
Josh Zelensky for the record. The land use public comments, and it's always hotly debated. There's very passionate voices from both sides. All of our resolutions, I think, I'd have to look at all the details, but I'm not sure if there's any misalignment. They basically kind of ride the line of, we support saving farmland in Oregon, but they're not like exclusive to one way or the other. I think if we do have that discussion, it will be an entire meeting. It will be a big portion of it. So, and it seems like we just did that recently, I think.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's any new land use laws coming up in the current session. But if there is, then yeah, it should be talked about.
Okay. Well, let's just wait for our new process, and if any of us decide that there is something that we want to bring up, but it's been brought to my attention that we probably do officially want to have a motion to pause our cadence of review of resolutions as we finalize the process going forward. That work? Yes, Ty?
Ty Cleaver for the record. I move to accept the chair's suggested framework.
Right? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And which includes the pause. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next, get back to my agenda here. We've already done meeting dates. We were going to discuss the idea of looking at some sort of a letter in regards to what we heard on Wednesday night, and to talk about just the challenges in the framework of the governor's prosperity initiative. We've done letters before. The question is, do we want to basically articulate those kind of things in light of the comments we received? Yes. Director Zelensky?
I fully support making a letter. I think it's really important that we remind the governor to not forget about ag in this whole motion, actually just natural resources in general.
Director Dill?
I support it too, but I almost don't think it's enough. Like, our summary, our letter is not gonna express what we heard. And so I wonder if we can write a letter, and in that letter suggest that there be in like ag or natural resources town hall where folks can speak to her directly, or if there's some other avenue. I don't know, just a thought, but hearing it is different than just reading a summary of what we heard.
Yeah. We can look at all those options. I think last time when and I don't think you were on the board yet, when we sent a letter in regards to the Ag Labor Standards Board, and I will say I think it was very helpful. And so I think just highlighting it, and then what comes of it, if the department says, okay, hey, a town hall or a forum or something else makes sense, but we can talk about those next steps. But the idea of getting some of those concerns on paper and focused in the context of the Prosperity Initiative probably makes some sense. And
Chad Allen here for the record, Chair.
Okay. Oh, there could be a proactive that there should be an ag representative on the Prosperity Council. That's why we pay you the big bucks as director. So thank you. Yeah, that actually could be a good proactive thing as part of this letter.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Chad Allen here for the record. I think a letter is a wonderful idea. I've been extremely excited about our willingness to have communication with the governor's office, and I complete and totally support it. I would imagine that, at the conclusion of any of our quarterly meetings, we probably have topics in which we could share. As a result of that, a more direct correspondence, than a newsletter kind of a thing, right? And so, I think we've been all appointed to advise the governor's office on things related to ag, and we need to find a way to do that in a proactive manner.
Okay. All right. I think it would benefit, because we did definitely have a motion when we did this last time and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the motion could be as flexible, it was as flexible as in taking what we heard on Wednesday evening to provide information for the governor to help educate her Prosperity Initiative, and to also ask for a voice for agriculture within that advisory council, or might have been called the Prosperity Council. Does that make sense? Director Cleaver.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move that the board draft a letter to the governor to highlight the statewide plight of agriculture, emphasize opportunities for improvement, and request a agricultural representative on the Prosperity Council.
Well done. At least one. At least one.
And more would be better.
Is there a second?
Like a second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The process of this, in light of the public meeting laws, what we did last time is I worked with ODA staff in getting that drafted. So I believe it would be fine if anybody has any specific comments to send to staff. They can't send to me, I don't think. to send to staff on content, but we heard what we heard. We have a recording of what we heard, so I think we're probably in pretty good shape, and then we'll get that off. Okay? Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Great. And Director Lopez, thank you. Sometimes I don't see if you have your hand raised, so I appreciate. People are keeping me honest here, so that's good. All right. Do we have anything else on our agenda? The one thing that was discussed is budget. And an idea here would be everything is going to be very fluid in regards to the budget. We know what the 5% looks like now. We've got some concerns, certainly, on that. But it is a moving target and things can change. So what I was thinking about is we can keep in touch, and if we want as things change, we could do a special call with the board and update the board, and if at that time, and also based on good timing with what's happening with the legislature and where their sentiments are, we could look at then on a budget standpoint, send a letter. But right now it might be premature because we don't.
Wait till February, I'd assume.
Yeah. But we want to be watchful of that. So that's my commitment to the board, as we will watch that and then give an opportunity. So, Director, did you have anything more on that?
Yeah, I think Jonathan, we had a little bit of conversation, and I think we can find a way, even though the short session moves rapidly, just to provide some information out to you all in terms of status. And then if we need to look to doing a special meeting, it's pretty easy to do a special meeting around an issue, so we can have the public conversation.
All right, because that was one other follow-up item for the business section of the discussion. So I think with that, unless I'm missing something, John, and I again want to thank John. He has done a tremendous job for us. And by the way, he was the one who submitted the questions to the panel, and very thoughtful. And I think you also even had some questions you submitted to Department of Energy, but we may not have, somehow there may have been a disconnect within their staff team on that to talk about more agricultural focus. So again, John, thank you for your leadership and appreciate everything you're doing here. So is there any further discussion on any points or good for the order? If none, meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Tell Bill we say happy 80th birthday.
Yes, I will. I've already got a bunch of.
Well, we should have had a birthday card and everybody signed it. Oh well, you can tell him.
I will tell.